Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Unlimited rewards in Marvel, and my girlfriend is Wonder Woman. Chapter 81. You really don't answer, General Ross said slowly. That's right, don't answer. After speaking, Russell directly hung up the phone. Although this will displease General Ross, he is not worried at all. If General Ross really didn't plan to keep his promise because of this, then he wouldn't mind letting General Ross know why he was called a crazy traveler. After hanging up the phone, he resumed his previous work. After thinking for a while, he finally decided to give Bakshi a call. For something like wool, plucking it once is also plucking it, and plucking it twice is also plucking it. Although it's not good to always catch a goat, but Hydra has a lot of money and shouldn't mind this too much. After receiving his call, Bakshi was stunned for a moment. After more than 10 seconds of silence, he said slowly, "It's not a big problem to start a military enterprise." Speaking of which, Bakshi paused. But it's not that easy to meet the requirements you just said. Although Bakshi said it very euphemistically, his meaning was obvious, that it was a bit difficult to handle. Hydra does have some energy, but it's not so large that it can create a large-scale military enterprise casually. According to Russell's request, what he wants is not just an arms company with R&D and sales capabilities. What he wants is an arms company with a supporting production plant. I know it's not an easy task, otherwise, I wouldn't come to you on purpose. Don't worry, I won't let your efforts go in vain this time. The price of the Zaku battle armor sold to the military is 120 million sets. If you want, I can sell it to you at the cost price. Although Hydra has arranged many female assistants with blonde hair and black silk in the laboratory, until now, these female assistants have not been able to access any confidential information. At present, only Russell, Peter, and Number 3 have access to the core data in the laboratory. What is the cost price? Bakshi was a little moved. 80 million. After Russell finished speaking, Bakshi on the other end of the phone fell silent. 80 million. If the cost of the Zaku armor is 80 million, I will eat the Zaku armor immediately. Although Bakshi is not a professional scientific researcher, he is sure of one thing, that is, the Zaku armor, which sells for 120 million yuan, will definitely cost less than 80 million yuan. If the cost is 80 million, Russell will definitely not only sell it for 120 million. The price of 80 million is too high. It is difficult for me to convince the leader to give a more sincere price. Bakshi said slowly, 60 million, this is the lowest price. If it's still too expensive, then forget it. When I didn't make this call. 60 million, okay, I'll tell the leader first, and I'll contact you when there is a result. Although it only dropped 20 million, Bakshi knew that this was almost the biggest concession that Russell could give. After hanging up the phone, Russell leaned back in his chair and looked up at the ceiling. General Ross is in charge of orders and platforms, and Hydra is in charge of the establishment of factories and companies. This arrangement is perfect. Although Hydra has not agreed to his conditions yet, he has tacitly agreed that Hydra has agreed. After dealing with these trivial matters, he came to the laboratory on the second floor. As soon as he came to the laboratory, he saw Number 3 and Peter, who were working hard. He is still short of the military's 4 Zaku armors that have not been delivered. Before the Octopus Monster Arms Company was established, they could only work hard for Number 3 and Peter. After looking at the progress of the armor's manufacturing, he first encouraged and praised Peter, and then brought Number 3 to the office on the 3rd floor. When Number 3 closed the door of the office, he said to No. 3, can you use spare fully intelligent liquid metal to make a second set of endosymbiotic battle armor? Okay, just reprogram it. Number 3 replied quickly. That's good, you can use all intelligent liquid metal to make an extra set of endosymbiotic battle armor as your daily body. After speaking, Russell took out the silver-white container containing the fully intelligent liquid metal in the system space. Let's start now, Russell said to No. 3. Number 3 controlled the battle armor and nodded, and came to the front of the huge silver-white barrel. A tentacle-like data line emerged from the tip of the battle armor's right finger, which was connected to the huge drum. When Number 3 reprogrammed the second set of endosymbiotic battle armor, Russell sat on the sofa chair and waited patiently. Since he obtained the endosymbiotic battle armor, he basically used the endosymbiotic battle armor. How to use it except after flying a few laps in New York wearing the endosymbiotic battle armor. Although he doesn't need to wear the endosymbiotic armor to fight now, for him, who has no ability to fly, the endosymbiotic armor can also be used as a means of transportation in addition to fighting. It only took more than 10 minutes to complete the programming on the third. Under Russell's gaze, a large cloud of fully intelligent liquid metal flew out of the silver-white drum. After these liquid metals leave the container, they begin to deform rapidly. In just a few seconds, these liquid metals were transformed into endosymbiotic battle armor. Looking at the two almost identical sets of endosymbiotic battle armor in front of him, Russell pointed to the set of battle armor that had just been transformed successfully and said to No. 3. The new one is called the number 2 machine, and the one you are using now is called the first machine. You usually use the number 2 machine, and I will use the number 1 machine. In order to facilitate the distinction between these two sets of endosymbiotic battle armors with almost identical appearances, Russell has formulated new serial numbers for these two sets of endosymbiotic battle armors. The first unit of endosymbiosis, the second unit of endosymbiosis. Good. So it was decided. Although the appearance looks exactly the same, the first machine has some more functions than the second machine. Zaku form. On the first machine, there is a Zaku form added later. Okay, sir. Number 3 did not hesitate and replied immediately. At the same time as answering Russell, number 3 began to transfer data and create a clone program. The core program of number 3 is still on the number 1 aircraft. After all, he is the supporting artificial intelligence of the endosymbiotic battle armor. After completing the data transfer, number 3 was about to control his new body, number 2, to leave the office when Russell's voice sounded again. Number 3, help the number 2 machine get a new paint, with red as the main color. The specific style is up to you. Okay, sir. Although number 3 did not know why Russell wanted to add a red paint to the number 2 machine, since Russell ordered it, he would unconditionally execute it. When number 3 left the office, Russell put the silver-white vat filled with all intelligent liquid metal and the first endosymbiotic machine back into the system space. Time is fleeting. In the blink of an eye, it was Saturday. On this day, before Russell got up, he received a call from Tony. It's Saturday, when are you coming over? As soon as the call was connected, Russell heard Tony's undisguised excited voice. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning, you don't have to be in such a hurry, I'll be there at 12. Russell replied helplessly. Russell knew why Tony was so excited, but that didn't mean he was in a good mood after being woken up by the phone. Isn't it just to create a steel battle suit? What is there to be excited about? I still have an endosymbiotic battle armor, do you see how excited I am? Hey, even at his age, he is still like a child, not stable at all. After hanging up the phone, Russell rubbed his eyes and got up to wash. Diana hadn't come home yet, and no one at home was making breakfast. Russell didn't want to do it himself, so he decided to go to the restaurant outside to solve it. After eating a fairly authentic Chinese breakfast at a Chinese restaurant outside, he drove his car to the laboratory unhurriedly. It's not even 11 o'clock now, so don't be in such a hurry. After coming to the laboratory, he first played Berserker's Creed for an hour, and then took out the first machine of endosymbiosis from the system space. With a thought, the silver-white endosymbiosis number 1 machine turned into a mercury-like liquid and flew towards him quickly. It didn't take a few seconds for him to complete the outfit of the battle armor. After putting on the armor, he did not leave the laboratory for the first time, but transformed the armor into a Zaku form. Army green body color, light blue helmet. After transforming into Zaku's form, he took out the beam rifle and thermal axe from the system space, and closed all external weapon ports on the back. It's just a contest with Tony's steel suit, it doesn't need to use so much firepower. After loading the beam rifle and thermal axe on the armor, he came to the roof wearing the armor. The flight system is activated. The legs of the armor shot out blue-white tail flames, and Russell flew into the sky like a rocket. Although the Zaku form looks a bit bulky, it does not affect the performance of the armor itself. Looking at the various data displayed on the helmet, Russell did not hesitate and flew towards the location of the mansion sent by Tony. Tony owns a lot of mansions in New York. The high housing prices in New York are in front of him, and the cheap ones are about the same as the fruit in the supermarket. Tony now lives in a mansion in the northern suburbs of upstate New York, far from the city, in a beautiful setting. After flying here according to the address sent by Tony, Russell in the armor frowned slightly. This place looks a little familiar. Although the buildings on the ground were somewhat different from what he remembered, and there were no huge Avengers logos on the roof and walls, no matter how you looked at it, it looked like the New York headquarters of the Avengers. But then again, the Avengers headquarters was originally contributed by Tony, so it's not particularly strange that Tony is here now. Just as he hovered in the air and looked down at the surrounding environment, a red figure flew towards him at high speed. Mark III. After seeing Tony wearing the Mark III flying towards him at high speed, Russell's mind quickly flashed information about the Mark III. It is 1.98 meters high and weighs about 90 kilograms. The cell is a palladium arc reactor Mark II. Weapons include the arc pulse gun Mark I in the palm, the cluster gun in the chest, the miniature missiles installed in the arms, the induction bombs in the legs, and the 6-barreled miniguns on the shoulders. Enhanced composite armor made of gold titanium alloy can withstand attacks from rifles and tank main guns. The assembly method is fully mechanized assembly. The maximum flight speed can reach supersonic speed, but below Mach 2.5, it can't get rid of the Sidewinder missile by virtue of speed. You came on time. After flying to Russell, Tony turned on the radio chat function and said to Russell, "I don't like being late." From the looks of it alone, the Mark III Tony now wears is no different from what he remembers. But I don't know if Tony has added other weapons. Your Zaku armor is not the same as the one sold to the military. Is it a special customized version? Although Mark III and Zaku's form of endosymbiosis number 1 looked completely different, Tony always felt that the chest and palms of number 1 were a little familiar. No, it's not just the chest and palms that look familiar. The flight main engines in the legs and the auxiliary engines in the back are also very similar to those of the Mark III. If it weren't for the different colors of the tail flame, Tony would have wondered if Russell had adopted the exact same flight engine design idea as himself. No, this is not a special customized version, this is a prototype. Russell replied with a smile. Prototype. The Zaku armor you sold to the military is far less good than the one you have now. Although Tony doesn't know how many functions Russell's battle armor has, as long as he looks at the battle armor's flying attitude at this time, he can know that the Zaku armor that Russell sold to the military has weakened more than a little. I can't deceive them in terms of performance. Before buying, they already know the performance parameters of Zaku's armor. Russell said indifferently. The Zaku armor bought by the military is indeed a low-end version, but he cannot fool the military. Things like specs and performance data, he provided it right from the start. The military also finally decided to buy the low-end version of the Zaku armor after the actual combat acceptance. You dare to sell $120 million for the low-end version. It's a pity that you don't do business. Tony said with a little emotion. You get what you pay for, why don't you dare? Don't say anything else. Didn't you say that your armor performance is better than mine, compared to one? Russell said slowly to Tony. Compare, I'm afraid you won't succeed. How do you want to compare? Tony responded quickly. Since it's all battle armor, it must be better than combat performance. Don't tell me that your battle armor is not equipped with a weapon system. Okay. As soon as the voice fell, Tony raised his hands and aimed the arc pulse gun in his palm at Russell. He seemed to have guessed early on that Russell would say this. Without any hesitation, Tony launched an attack decisively. The beam-like energy flew towards the Russell lightning. The moment Tony raised his hands, Russell knew what the guy was up to. Before the arc pulse cannon hit him, he decisively controlled the battle armor. I saw the first machine in the form of Zaku dodged sideways, easily dodging the attack of the arc pulse cannon. The next second, Russell raised his right hand and aimed his palm at Tony. He also has the arc pulse cannon in the palm of his hand, and it is more powerful. Although Tony saw Russell's movements, he underestimated the arc pulse cannon on the palm of the first machine. Compared with the Mark I arc pulse gun he is currently using, the arc pulse gun in the palm of the first machine does not require energy storage at all. As soon as Russell's palm was aimed at Tony, he fired decisively. Bang! The beam-like energy hit Tony with precision, causing him to tumble in embarrassment while flying. The flight attitude was destroyed, and Tony was not surprised. However, he never thought that Russell's arc pulse gun would directly penetrate the composite defensive armor of Mark III. Looking at the fist-sized hole in his chest, Tony's face became a little ugly. How is this possible? Tony stared in disbelief at the hole in his chest that was still sparking. Although Russell's arc pulse cannon did not completely penetrate the composite defensive armor of Mark III and did not hurt him in the armor, he was still a little unbelievable after seeing the hole. As the maker, he knows how powerful the composite defensive armor of Mark III is. At the same time, he also knew very well how powerful the palm-sized arc pulse gun had to be in order to destroy the composite defensive armor of Mark III with one blow. Although the arc pulse gun is not his exclusive invention, as far as he knows, he is the only person who has made the arc pulse gun small weapon. Russell's armor also placed an arc pulse cannon in the palm of his hand, which was surprising enough. However, what is even more unexpected is that the power of the arc pulse gun on Russell's armor can actually reach the level of breaking the defensive armor of Mark III. In just 2 or 3 seconds, Tony figured out how high the energy efficiency of the arc pulse gun must be in order to break through the defensive armor of Mark III with one blow. While Tony stared at the hole in Mark III's chest in shock, Russell did not continue to attack him. He came this time, not to kill Tony. Tony is a chicken that lays golden eggs. Russell is also counting on Tony to activate more system rewards. Endosymbiotic armor is obviously not the only reward that Tony can activate. Who developed your armor for you? I want to meet the real developer of the armor. Tony raised his head and spoke quickly over the radio. Okay, if you beat me, I'll let you meet the real developer of the armor. Russell replied quickly. Having said that, he doesn't think Tony has any chance of winning himself. Although the Mark III and the endosymbiotic armor are both high-tech armors, even the inventors are the same. But Mark III is at least several major versions behind the endosymbiotic warframe. If Tony can beat him in the Mark III, Russell will eat the endosymbiotic armor now. This is what you said, don't go back. Tony didn't know what was going on, and suddenly said to Russell with great confidence. I never regret it, Russell replied with a serious face. After hearing his answer, Tony turned around and ran without any hesitation. Although the Mark III is not a battle armor specially developed for high-speed flight, its flight speed is not slow at all. With just one acceleration, the Mark III easily broke the sound barrier. A short and strong explosion sounded suddenly. Sonic boom. Looking at Tony, who quickly disappeared from sight, Russell smiled helplessly. Although he didn't know what Tony was thinking about, it was obvious that Tony was now placing his hopes on the speed of the Mark III. Since you want to play, then I will play with you. Russell did not hesitate, and controlled the number 1 aircraft to fly towards Tony, who had disappeared from sight. Although Tony could no longer be seen within sight, the display on the helmet clearly showed Tony's current position. Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3. Without much effort, the first machine broke through the high speed of Mach 3 and easily broke the sound barrier. Although Mach 3 is not the limit speed of the first aircraft, flying in the atmosphere has to consider aerodynamics. Bricks fly. That's right, but it does not conform to the aerodynamic shape. The higher the speed, the greater the air resistance it will suffer. Compared with the Mark III, the Zaku form of the first machine is obviously less aerodynamic. But even so, Russell has no plans to restore the first machine to its endosymbiotic form. The Zaku form is indeed not in line with aerodynamics, but it is not difficult to catch up with the fast-flying Mark III. The speed limit of the Mark III is not even Mach 2.5, not even the Sidewinder missile. The number 1 aircraft has now surpassed the speed of Mach 3, and it is only a matter of time before it catches up with the Mark III. Tony thought that the Mark III could have a certain advantage in flight speed. However, Russell was quick to tell him the answer with facts. Tony frowned as he watched the signal from the first number getting closer and closer on the helmet screen. Which developed this guy's armor? Tony cursed in his heart. As a top weapon inventor, Tony knows very well how much black technology far ahead of the times is required for this high-tech humanoid armor. He originally thought that it was impossible for anyone other than himself to invent this top-notch individual weapon. But now, He felt that he was thinking too much. In fact, Tony does think a little too much now. He would never have thought that the armor Russell is wearing now was invented by him in another universe. Although the signal of the first machine is getting closer and closer to him, Tony still has no plans to slow down. Now he is not running away. He is now going to a classified warehouse of Stark Industries in New York. Although the Mark III was equipped with some weapons, after seeing the first aircraft easily break through the Mark III's defensive armor with the arc pulse cannon in the palm of his hand, Tony knew that it was impossible for him to defeat Russell only by relying on the existing weapons of the Mark III. To defeat Russell, he must have more powerful weapons. Soon, with only the last 10 kilometers left, the Stark warehouse, which contains a large number of weapons, is about to arrive. However, at this moment, Tony was surprised to find that Russell actually came less than 100 meters behind him. After discovering this, a surprised look appeared on his face. How could he be so fast? The helmet's screen shows that Russell is now flying at an astonishing speed of Mach 3.5. Tony snorted involuntarily. When the distance was pulled to the last 100 meters, Tony made a decisive choice. Since the limit speed is not enough, then rely on the mobility to get rid of the opponent. Just do it. The Mark III were fully activated. Jarvis, leave me alone, perform extreme maneuvers, and get rid of the guy behind. Under normal circumstances, Tony can completely control himself, and Jarvis can provide some assistance. But by this time, Tony had to hand over control of the Mark III to Jarvis. He is indeed a genius, but artificial intelligence like Jarvis can make more precise control of high-tech equipment. Sir, extreme maneuvering will cause you some damage. Are you sure you want to do this? Okay, start now. Of course, Tony knew that extreme mobility would cause a certain amount of damage to him in the armor, but this was the only way he had left now. If he can't get rid of Russell, he can't go to the warehouse. If he can't go to the warehouse, he can't get other weapons. Without other weapons, he could not have defeated Russell. Tony is not a fighter, he doesn't have that so-called thirst for victory and honor. But now, he still has the desire to defeat Russell. For nothing else, just because of the real developer of Russell's armor. As a top weapons inventor, Tony has been invincible for far too long. Now, however, he has found an opponent who can compete with him in weapons development. Not just a competition. Judging from the current situation, the opponent's weapon research and development level is even above him. After all, there is no way for him now to achieve the amazing power of the palm-sized arc pulse cannon. Jarvis doesn't know why Tony would rather risk injury than get rid of Russell in the back. But since Tony has given a clear order, he will execute it 100%. From this point of view, artificial intelligences like Jarvis and Number 3 are much more reliable than their human counterparts. At least they won't have any superfluous ideas. When Jarvis took over the control of the Mark III, which was still flying at extreme speed, suddenly braked to the limit. What the hell? Russell didn't expect Tony to play so big. He was flying towards Mark III at high speed, and he almost collided with Mark III fiercely. The first machine and the Mark III passed by. In just an instant, Tony disappeared from Russell's line of sight. If it weren't for the excellent radar on the first plane, the emergency limit braking of Mark III would have caused Russell to completely lose his target. Looking at the virtual screen in the helmet, Russell did not hesitate, and also gave orders to No. 3. Number 3, take over the first machine, catch up with Tony Stark. Okay, sir. The voice of Number 3 suddenly sounded. The next second, the main control of the first machine fell into the hands of No. 3. After taking over the first aircraft and flight attitude assistance functions on the first aircraft were all turned on. In the blink of an eye, the first plane flew towards the Mark III at a very high speed. Russell though did not know that Tony handed over control of the Mark III to Jarvis. However, judging from the extreme maneuverability of Mark III today, Tony is going to give it a shot. Under the control of Jarvis, the Mark III made various maneuvers that could make the ace pilots of the U.S. Army stunned, drawing amazing flight lines in the air. However, even so, the first machine in the form of Zaku still firmly bit the Mark III. On the bright side, this is a test between Russell and Tony. But the truth is, it's a test of two artificial intelligences, Number 3 and Jarvis. Sharp turns, barrel rolls, high-power maneuvers, low-power maneuvers, roll scissors, Immerman somersaults, half-roll reverses, overstall maneuvers. Number 3 and Jarvis are now like two ace pilots, making all kinds of air combat tactical actions at extreme speed. You chase me and don't give in to each other. While chasing at a high speed, Number 3 and Jarvis did not forget to attack each other. The arc pulse cannon in the palm is constantly switching between flight assistance and combat weapons. Although Number 3 and Jarvis played very lively, neither of their attacks would make much sense in today's high-speed state, unless it is loaded with specialized air-to-air weapons. Otherwise, other weapons simply can't keep up with the speed of the first and the Mark III, let alone hit the target. However, there is no denying that this scene still looks good. While maintaining a high-speed flight in the air, the two humanoid armors fired beam-like energy attacks from their palms. If you change the environment, the current battle between Number 3 and Jarvis is quite like some future mecha battles. Sir, the target's armor performance is obviously better than that of Mark III, do you want to give up the existing tactics? Jarvis said to Tony. Sir, the performance of the target's armor has reached its limit, do you want to destroy the opponent immediately? Number 3 said to Russell. No, keep going. Tony and Russell made the same choice. Destroying the Mark III is not difficult for the first aircraft. But Russell didn't want to kill Tony right now. Even if you can't squeeze all the rewards that Tony can activate, at least you have to squeeze out a few more rewards. The endosymbiotic warframe is indeed a good set, but not the most powerful set in Tony's warframe. Just to prevent Tony from becoming Iron Man because of the kidnapping incident, you can get the endosymbiotic armor. If it has a few major impacts on Tony's fate, it is not impossible to get the anti-Phoenix armor and Odin's blessing armor. After getting replies from Russell and Tony, Number 3 and Jarvis continued their chasing air battle. Time passed little by little. The first aircraft and the Mark III flew farther and farther. First out of New York State, then out of America, then across the Atlantic. Finally, after a long chase, the first plane and the Mark III came to Afghanistan, where Russell and Tony first met. The two battle armors are now consuming a lot of energy, but at the current consumption rate, the first aircraft and the Mark III can maintain at least several hours of extremely fast flight. After chasing all the way from New York to Afghanistan, Russell finally decided to end this air battle. This time it seems that there are no rewards to activate. Russell sighed helplessly. Number 3, stop playing, catch up and destroy Mark III's leg-flying device. Okay, sir. Number 3 replied immediately. Tony in Mark III, it is not yet known that Russell has given new orders to 3. Right now, he only felt that his whole body was not right, and he had a strong sense of dizziness. If it weren't for his willpower, he would probably spit it out right now. At this moment, he suddenly felt an obvious impact. Looking back, the first machine is behind him. Although he was very unwilling, Tony knew that this was impossible. The limit speed of Mark III is far less than that of Russell's first machine. It is not easy for Jarvis to rely on maneuvering to hold on to the present. Just when Number 3 was about to grab Mark Number 3's right foot and use the arc pulse cannon to directly destroy the flight engine of Mark Number 3's right foot, Tony turned on the radio call and said to Russell, "It's not more than that." "Well, you win, don't destroy the engine of the Mark III." Okay. After hearing Tony's voice, Russell stopped Number 3 from attacking and took over the armor at the same time. "Go talk on the ground, I'm a little dizzy now." After speaking, Tony flew directly towards the ground. Russell didn't say anything and followed. When the Mark III landed, Tony took off his helmet, bent over and vomited. Now, he feels like he has been on a crazy roller coaster all day, and everything in his stomach is turning upside down. Seeing Tony vomited like he drank too much, Russell silently backed away for a distance. In the hot desert, two men in high-tech armor stood not far from each other. The one in the army green armor stood up straight, while the one in the red armor stooped and vomited frantically. After spitting out everything in his stomach, Tony finally stood up straight. Just as he turned to look at Russell, Russell's voice came over. Then, Tony saw a bottle of mineral water flying towards him. Just when he was about to reach out to take it, he suddenly remembered something and stopped the movement of his right hand. The mineral water drew a standard parabola in the air. Then, it fell on the yellow sand in front of Tony. Tony looked at the mineral water in front of him, and then at Russell a few meters away. After some thought, he finally picked up the mineral water on the ground, twisted the bottle cap, and quickly rinsed his mouth. When the disgusting odor in his mouth disappeared, he drank some mineral water. Thanks. After twisting the bottle cap, Tony said to Russell. You are welcome. After hearing Russell's answer, Tony reacted. Where did you get the mineral water from? You guess. Russell certainly wouldn't tell Tony that he had a magical system space. His answer was obviously not the answer Tony wanted to hear. However, Tony did not continue to ask, but repeatedly looked at the first machine that Russell was wearing. After looking at it for dozens of seconds, he opened his mouth again and said, Your battle armor was remodeled to look like this later, right? Sure, I actually saw it. Why ask that? Russell raised his brows and asked back. Please, it's obvious. Tony rolled his eyes at Russell, and then continued. From the appearance point of view, your current Zaku armor does not have any problems, and the performance is also very good. If I'm not mistaken, there are a lot of external weapon interfaces reserved behind the armor. It seems that you plan to transform the Zaku armor into a firepower output platform. Russell didn't speak, nodded and motioned Tony to continue. For others, it's pretty good to be able to develop the armor to this level. However, there are many completely different design ideas on your Zaku armor. The arc pulse gun in the palm, the flight engine on the legs, the auxiliary engine on the back, on the fuselage, etc., these obviously belong to another development idea, which is obviously too different from your current Zaku armor style. By the way, there is also the thing on the chest of the armor. It should not only be the energy core of the armor. It seems that it should also be a kind of main weapon. In terms of style, it doesn't look like an arc pulse cannon, but a cluster cannon, right? If it is a cluster gun on the chest, it can not only act as a more powerful main weapon, but also complement the arc pulse gun in the palm to make more tactical cooperation. Wonderful. He is indeed the top weapon inventor of this era. Just by observing the shape of the armor, you can come to such an accurate judgment. Beautiful. Russell almost couldn't help clapping for Tony. However, he suppressed the urge. Wonderful insight. Anything else? Russell continued to ask. Do you want anything else? If you're willing to hand me the armor for a few days, I can make a more accurate judgment, but now, it's good to have these. Tony turned back to the arrogant guy. Although I don't know who designed your armor for you, I must admit that the guy who developed this armor is a real genius. If you can meet him and exchange ideas, it will be a blessing for me and for him. Tony put away the arrogant attitude on his face and said very seriously. Let's talk about it when you have a chance. Russell could understand what Tony was thinking now. For someone like Tony, it's really not easy to meet someone who can match his opponent. Just when Russell was about to activate the flight system and leave this hot desert, Tony's voice came again. Can I take a look at the original appearance of the armor? The graphic design is also fine, the shape part is fine. After hearing Tony's words, Russell stopped the activation of the flight system and looked at Tony with a complicated expression. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, yes. A happy smile appeared on Tony's face. For some reason, after seeing Tony's smile, Russell suddenly had a strange feeling. This guy is really pure and a bit like a child. After sighing, he said again, for the sake of sending the reward to the office in person last time, I will also give you a small reward. Tony was stunned for a moment, not quite understanding what Russell meant. However, he soon knew what Russell was talking about in small returns. After speaking, Russell directly controlled the battle armor and began to restore the battle armor to its original endosymbiotic state. The Jagu form, which looked a bit thick and rough in appearance, quickly disappeared. Instead, it is an endosymbiotic form that is more than 95% similar to Mark III. Great gift crab. Tony looked at the scene in front of him with disbelief. Under his gaze, the army green Zaku armor of the fuselage quickly disappeared, and in an unbelievable way, it transformed into an endosymbiotic form. Looking at the silvery endosymbiotic battle armor in front of him, Tony was stunned for a while, not knowing what to say. Are you surprised? Russell said with a smile. Surprise. It's a shock. Let's make a condition. What price do I have to pay to see the developer of this armor? Tony said very firmly. Look at fate. when fate arrives, you will naturally meet the developers of the armor. Russell shrugged and said casually. Fate, let's not talk about the meeting. What is the name of the developer of the armor? You should be able to tell me. Tony's extremely smart brain is now completely under the control of his emotions. Forehead. Russell didn't answer Tony right away. He can't tell Tony that, this armor is designed by you. If he really said that, Tony would probably take him as a lunatic. After some serious and rigorous thinking, he slowly said, Howard, his name is Howard. Howard. Tony's expression became extremely strange. His father's name was Howard. Aren't you kidding me? Tony asked very seriously. Of course not. Russell now showed his superb acting skills and answered with a serious face. Howard, okay, I remember. Please go back and tell Howard that I appreciate his designs, and I'm always available if he wants to meet. New York, Octopus Lab. After showing the true form of the endosymbiotic armor in front of Tony, Russell did not change the first machine back to the Zaku form. Although the Zagu form is pretty good looking, compared with the endosymbiotic form, the Zagu form looks a bit rough. He didn't regret showing the true form of the endosymbiotic armor in front of Tony. He can't make the first machine appear in Zaku form forever. Anyway, the internal symbiotic battle armor will show up sooner or later, and it doesn't matter if Tony knows it earlier. In this way, one can avoid this guy from saying that he copied his armor in the future, and secondly, it can also plant a seed of curiosity in Tony's heart. As long as Tony sees the true form of the endosymbiotic battle armor, with this guy's character, he will definitely find a way to figure out what the endosymbiotic battle armor is all about. Russell is not afraid that Tony has ideas, he is afraid that Tony has no ideas. After returning to the laboratory, he put the first machine back into the system space. Then, sitting on the sofa chair, bored looking at the ceiling. He originally thought that this meeting and competition with Tony would somehow activate another reward. However, it turned out that he thought too much. Tony does have rewards that he can continue to squeeze, but how to activate it is a question worth thinking about. Judging from the current situation, if you want to activate rewards from Tony, Banner and others, simple contact is definitely not enough. As of now, the only way that seems more reliable is to have a major impact on their fate. Like stopping Tony from becoming Iron Man because of the kidnapping. Change destiny. After thinking for a while, Russell decisively gave up and continued to think about this issue. Although the rewards of the system are quite good, the rewards given are sometimes not satisfactory. For example, the reward called Power of Abomination, activated by Bronsky. After taking a break in the office, he transformed into a serum agent form, opened the office window, and left the laboratory with his tentacles swaying. Do good deeds every day. Although this is just a daily prestige quest for serum, it's not a bad thing to go out and brush up prestige. New York is still as peaceful as ever. Not long after leaving the laboratory, Russell completed today's daily mission of doing good deeds. He stopped a robbery, knocked out a guy who was robbing a convenience store and handed it over to the police. After taking care of this little robber with no lofty aspirations, he was just about to go to other places to see if there was an opportunity to continue to do good, when a familiar figure appeared in his sight. Gwen. At this time, Gwen was wearing a spider uniform that fully highlighted her figure, and she was moving fast in the high-rise building with spider silk. After seeing Gwen's slightly hurried figure, he did not hesitate, shot his tentacles towards the building next to him, followed Gwen in the same special way as Gwen. After all the way from Queens to Manhattan, Gwen finally stopped on the roof of a building, standing on the edge of the roof, overlooking the street below. After seeing Gwen stop, Russell did not go directly to the building where Gwen was, but came to the roof of the opposite building. Looking in the direction where Gwen was looking down, Russell saw the situation on the street. There is an overturned truck on the street. Not far behind the car, there was a police car that had been strafed. There was a group of police officers around the police car, and 3 of them were already lying on the ground. Judging from the rescue actions of the surrounding police, the 3 policemen lying on the ground are not dead yet. Russell was still looking at the police on the street when the siren of an ambulance came from a distance. After hearing the honking of the ambulance, Russell took his eyes away from the police on the street and looked at Gwen in the opposite building. Forehead. What about people? Gwen had left the opposite building and didn't know where to go. Although he didn't know where Gwen went, after thinking about it, he decided not to waste this good opportunity to gain reputation. I saw him shoot white tentacles towards the building next to him, and then quickly landed on the street. He just landed on the street, and before he could speak, the enthusiastic citizens around him gathered around and quickly explained what happened at the scene. In short, this is a very common robbery. What the robbers stole, these enthusiastic citizens do not know. However, these zealous citizens provided a useful piece of information. The car is escorted by a police car. The messy police car that was shot was the one that escorted the car. Robbed with a police and got it. These robbers are interesting. Which direction did the robbers go? After hearing Russell's words, these enthusiastic citizens immediately pointed out the direction in which the robbers fled. Russell glanced at the direction the robber was fleeing, and just as he was about to shoot the white tentacles, he stopped. Chief Stacy, Gwen's father is here. Russell stepped out of the crowd, went outside the cordon, and looked at the 3 injured police officers. Although he had not dealt with Gwen's father, George Stacy, he had seen pictures of George. The investigation report sent back by the private detective contained a photo of George. It's actually Gwen's father. Looking at George lying on the ground, shot at least 5 or 6 times all over his body, and completely fainted, Russell finally knew why Gwen was so anxious. After thinking for a while, he stepped forward and came to George's side. The surrounding police glanced at him and did not stop him. That's what a good reputation does. Looking down at George, whose breathing had almost stopped, Russell sighed. Count your luck. Who let you have a beautiful daughter? Russell is also a master of guns. After seeing the wound on George's body, he knew that George would die 99% of the time. Under the watchful eyes of the surrounding police, Russell squatted down and put his right hand on George's chest, which was no longer undulating. Here, the white symbiote entered George's body along his palm, the warhead stuck in George's body was squeezed out. At the same time, George's damaged internal organs began to repair rapidly, and the wound began to heal rapidly. In less than 5 seconds, Russell used the power of the serum to heal the dying George. The surrounding police looked at the scene in shock, and some couldn't believe what they saw. Not only did the cops not think about it, but George also didn't think about it. Just now, the revolving lights of life began to appear in George's mind. The fully recovered George touched the part where he was shot in disbelief. After seeing George sitting up, Russell didn't say anything, shot white tentacles toward the building next to him, and chased in the direction the robber left with his tentacles. No, are you leaving here? Seeing the figure of Russell leaving quickly, George Stacy, who had just recovered, and the surrounding police officers showed unexpected expressions. Especially the 2 policemen who were not so seriously injured and in no danger of death showed a puzzled look. Everyone is a policeman, and they are all injured, so why only save George? Of course Russell knew that only saving George would upset the other 2 policemen, but he still had no plans to cure them. George has a beautiful daughter with superpowers anyway, do you 2 have one? More importantly, after living in the United States for a few years, he is very clear about a truth, that is, here, being a good person who helps everyone will often not end well. You can help people, but there must be a bottom line. If you don't want to be kidnapped by inexplicable morals, it's best not to be too Madonna in the first place. Russell is just playing a superhero now, he never thought of being a real superhero. If he cured all 3 of George this time, the next time he encounters this kind of thing, if he doesn't save other policemen, he will definitely be written about by those news media. Besides, if he cured the 2 policemen by the way, it would give people the feeling that he could cure other people at will. Once he has left such an impression in the minds of the public, he will know without thinking that he will encounter various inexplicable moral kidnappings in the future. I won't talk about healing the injured policeman. If it's too much, he will even ask him to go to the hospital to heal the patient. Although this may seem unlikely, in a politically correct country like the United States, it is likely to happen. After swaying his tentacles for a while in the high-rise buildings, Russell finally saw Gwen. After seeing Gwen, he also saw the robber's car racing down the street. It can be seen that there is a skilled driver among the robbers. In the traffic, the black BMW ran like a racing car, leaving the police car with its siren far behind. Russell picked up speed slightly after seeing Gwen and the robber's vehicle. As he picked up speed, Gwen picked up speed. I saw Gwen draw a graceful arc in the air. A few seconds later, she landed precisely on the roof of the robber's car. After landing on the roof, Gwen changed his style and grabbed the passenger's door. Before the robbers in the car could fire, Gwen ripped the door down. Obviously, Gwen is really angry now. After violently tearing the door off, Gwen lifted the door in his hand and smashed it hard against the windshield. Bang! The windshield shattered and the door hit the driver like a brick. After seeing this scene, Russell couldn't help taking a breath. This is the consequence of angering a woman with superpowers. The driver of the car was hit hard, and the rushing car suddenly lost control. At the moment when the robber's car was about to roll over, Gwen shot spider silk towards the building next to him. The robber in the car would never have imagined that a sophisticated robbery would eventually fail in the hands of a furious superpower woman. But now they don't need to think about it. Watching the overturned car roll forward under the influence of inertia, Russell mourned for the robbers for a few seconds in his heart. When the robber's car stopped rolling, Gwen landed on the street again. Before the robber got out of the car, Gwen brutally pulled the injured robber out of the car. I have to say that these robbers were lucky. Or rather, the act of wearing their seatbelts saved their lives. Although they were injured, they did not die directly in the overturned car. Just when Gwen was about to vent his anger on these robbers, Russell's voice rang. If you want to teach a lesson or kill them, I suggest you move to a place with fewer people. By the way, he's all right, I cured him. After hearing Russell's voice, Gwen realized that Russell had come behind him at some point. If it was under normal circumstances, Russell would not have been able to hide from Gwen's spider sense and come behind her. But now Gwen was clearly overwhelmed with anger. Gwen stopped the fist he was about to raise and turned to look at Russell. Although Gwen is wearing a hood now, Russell has no way of seeing her expression. But he could roughly imagine how Gwen looked now. He didn't say George's name, but he was sure that Gwen would understand what he meant. As he expected, after hearing his words, Gwen let go of the robber in his hands and came straight to him. Is he really all right? There was some disbelief in Gwen's tone. Of course, if you don't believe it, you can go back and have a look now. Russell said with great certainty. To be precise, George is not only fine now, but healthier than ever. When he pulled George back from the hand of death, he also cured some of the ills that George had left behind as a policeman for many years. Gwen said nothing, looked at Russell, then turned to look at the four robbers who had been violently dragged out of the car by her. Hearing the sirens coming closer, Gwen finally made a decision. She shot the spider silk towards the building next to her and swung it back to where George was injured. Seeing Gwen leaving, Russell came to the four robbers with blood on their faces. After confirming that the robbers were not mortally wounded, he removed all the weapons from the robbers and stood there waiting for the police to arrive. It didn't take long for the policemen who were almost thrown off by the robbers to come to him. After handing over the robber to the police who came, he shot his tentacles and left here. 5 or 6 minutes later, he returned to the rooftop of the building where Gwen had been. Gwen is here now, standing on the edge of the rooftop, watching George as he directs other police officers down the street to deal with the robbery scene. As soon as Russell came to Gwen, Gwen's voice rang. Thanks. You are welcome. After standing on the edge of the rooftop and watching George silently for a few minutes, Gwen said again, Do you know who I am? Right, Russell replied directly. When did you know, before or after the first meeting? Gwen continued to ask. Before meeting. After hearing Russell's answer, Gwen, who had been focusing on George, finally turned to look at Russell. After reading nearly one copy of Russell like this, she spoke again. You come with me. Although Gwen didn't say where to go, Russell didn't care about this at all and nodded silently. After seeing Russell nod, Gwen took the lead in shooting spider silk towards the building next door. As soon as Gwen left with the spider silk, Russell shot his tentacles and followed behind Gwen. The Queen. Russell thought that Gwen would find a place where no one else would disturb them, and the two of them had a good chat and exchanged feelings. Unexpectedly, Gwen actually took him directly to a residential building in Queens. This is a residential building with only 8 floors. Gwen's home, or safe house, is on the 8th floor of the top floor. After swinging from the residential building next door to the balcony that was not very spacious, Gwen pushed open the door of the balcony and walked in. Russell followed Gwen in and closed the balcony door. He had just closed the balcony door when Gwen took off the hood he was wearing. Blonde, big waves, melon face, Caslin big eyes. With an upturned nose and attractive red lips, Gwen looks no worse than a Hollywood actress. If you add her status as a superhero and a female college student, in the hearts of some men, her charm is even greater than that of a female star. Russell is one of those men. Although he had seen Gwen's photos before, at this time, he had to admit that the real Gwen looked much better than the photos. There is no one else here, you can change back to your normal appearance. Gwen looked at Russell and said slowly. Unlike others, Gwen had seen Russell's true serum form and knew that Russell was wearing no special uniform. Russell nodded and released his current serum agent form. Gwen's face showed the look it sure was you when he dismantled his agent serum form. After seeing Gwen's expression, Russell said slowly, "It seems that you know who I am too." Although Gwen did not join a superhero team like the Fantastic Four or an official organization like S.H.I.E.L.D., she has been a superhero for 4 years. She knew exactly what the underworld in New York was all about. Although I didn't see your true face that night, I guessed it was you after hearing about the hand. Just sit down. Gwen threw the hood in his hand onto the sofa, turned and walked towards the refrigerator. What do you drink, cola or mineral water? Gwen opened the refrigerator and placed it in the living room, and asked without looking back. All right, now Russell doesn't care what to drink at all, he is now admiring Gwen's curvaceous and charming back. I have to say that when Gwen took off her headgear, it was a completely different feeling to appreciate her back from behind. Although Gwen didn't look back, she could feel Russell's undisguised gaze. The existence of spider sense greatly enhanced her perception ability. After taking out 2 bottles of mineral water from the refrigerator, Gwen returned to Russell and handed him one of the bottles. Thanks. Russell thanked him and took the mineral water. After opening the mineral water and taking a sip, he looked at Gwen's house. This is a small apartment with not many rooms, but it is very warmly furnished. If you ignore the surveillance radio placed in the living room. Apart from the out-of-place surveillance radio, this place is not much different from other apartments where girls live alone. Seeing Russell surveying his apartment, Gwen said again, "Didn't you think I'd take you home?" Forehead. Gwen's words may not mean anything in particular, but it still sounds odd. I really didn't expect that since you knew who I was, you would bring me back with such confidence. Russell asked Gwen back. His reputation in the underworld was not a good one. Although Gwen has superpowers, she is a woman no matter what, a female college student who just turned 20. Before today, I was really worried, but now, I don't think you are a bad person. Gwen said as he came to the sofa in the living room and sat down lazily. Why, just because I cured your father? Russell came to the sofa opposite Gwen and sat down and asked Gwen. He was now a little curious about what Gwen was thinking. Although he doesn't think he is a pure bad person, how can I put it, in the current mainstream values, he really has nothing to do with good people. Taking a survey in the New York underworld, Russell could guarantee that, with the exception of his undead employers and a few close friends, everyone else would put him in the bad guy category without any suspense. This is only one aspect, mainly my intuition tells me that you are not a bad person. Gwen said confidently. After she finished speaking, she added another sentence. My intuition is very accurate, and I usually can't go wrong. Russell did not expect that this was the reason why Gwen thought he was not a bad person, and shook his head helplessly. Today's female college students are still a little too simple. Thinking of female college students, he couldn't help but think of Alice at Culver University, of the secret teaching in the small classroom. Why, don't you believe it? Gwen raised an eyebrow. No, I believe it. Russell had no intention of arguing with Gwen on the issue. Let's not talk about the rest. You brought me back to your house, shouldn't you be telling me this? If it's just talking about this, Gwen doesn't need to bring him here at all. Of course not. After speaking, Gwen suddenly sat upright. Caslin stared at Russell with big eyes, and said very seriously, your agent-like dress is intentional, right? Russell thought that Gwen would ask a particularly serious question, but it turned out that this was what Gwen asked. Under Gwen's gaze, he answered very seriously, yes, it was intentional, what's wrong? Humph. Hearing his answer, Gwen snorted suddenly. Russell is also an experienced tea taster, but he did not expect that Gwen would react like this now. He is quite confident in his own charm, otherwise, he would not be able to find those opponents to learn from. But he wasn't arrogant enough to think that all girls would like him. Azu is indeed handsome, but some people just like Xiaoxie in another style. You'd better not hum, Russell said to Gwen. Why? Gwen asked back. Your male classmates didn't tell you. Is it tempting when you hum with your nasal voice? If you keep humming like this, I can't guarantee that something will happen in a while. For American girls, being subtle is useless. No matter if you want to pick up a girl, or if you want to spend a spring night with each other, just show it upright. If you don't even have this courage, it's hard to impress American girls. Gwen stood up suddenly, looking down at Russell. Then, said something that Russell never thought of. You want to sleep with me? As he spoke, Gwen also raised his chin and puffed out his chest. Forehead. Shouldn't she also have the tendency to be a royal sister? Looking at Gwen's actions now, Russell unconsciously thought of Diana, who was still on a business trip. You're a very beautiful woman, with a good face and an attractive figure, and you're a superhero and a college girl. I'm a normal man. Do you think I'd want to sleep with you? You may not know it, but on a certain learning site, your video is #1 in the superhero category. Although the image of Diana wearing armor and holding the Vulcan sword appeared in his mind, Russell gave a decisive answer. This is Gwen's apartment, not his and Diana's. As long as he doesn't take it home, he has nothing to fear. Russell thought that today would be a good day to feast on himself. But the truth is, there are indeed some people who eat too much today. But that person was not him. When Gwen finally ended this instinctive hunting behavior, Russell began to miss the normal human women like flight attendant Melissa and college girl Alice. Although they are all women, it is clear that women with extraordinary abilities are very difficult to deal with. If you are not careful, you will change from hunter to prey. The best hunters often appear as prey. Russell has a new understanding of the phrase. It was night when Gwen and Russell came out of the bedroom. Gwen changed out of the Spider-Woman uniform that could fully accentuate her attractive figure, and came to the living room in a casual outfit. Although Gwen has a pair of long legs with beautiful lines and perfect legs, she is not wearing a short skirt that can feast your eyes, but a pair of denim trousers. After coming to the living room, Gwen frowned slightly, turned to the tired Russell and said, "There is no food at home. Do you want to order takeout or go out to eat?" After hearing the word takeout, Russell suddenly felt a little sore in his waist, and rubbed his waist unconsciously. Let's eat out, I know some good restaurants. Russell said silently. Okay, let's go out to eat. After speaking, Gwen went back to the bedroom and brought a women's handbag. A very common handbag, not a designer bag. With Gwen's family background and charm, if she wants those designer bags, it's not difficult at all. But she has no interest in the designer bags and big-name clothes that can excite ordinary girls. Gwen now dresses no different from ordinary girls of this age. Very next door. Very gentle and lovely. She looks like a big sister next door. However, girls like her, no matter how ordinary they are still so dazzling. The completion of fashion mainly depends on the face. Gwen is now the perfect embodiment of that. After leaving the residential building, Russell wanted to take Gwen to a famous French restaurant in Manhattan and have a warm French meal with Gwen. However, Gwen declined his offer without thinking. After coming down from the residential building, Gwen directly took his right arm and led him towards the small restaurant only a few hundred meters away from the residential building. This is a very ordinary restaurant. Ordinary decor, ordinary food. After arriving at the restaurant, Gwen greeted the owner and waiter of the restaurant familiarly. "Are you sure you want to eat here?" Russell asked Gwen. "Is there a problem here?" Gwen asked back. "No, as long as you like it." Just look at the way Gwen greets the restaurateur and waiters to know that she often comes to this restaurant for dinner. When they sat down by the window of the restaurant owner walked up with a smile on his face and asked them what they wanted to eat. Gwen didn't even look at the menu and started placing orders. After placing the order, the restaurant owner did not leave immediately, but with an expression that adults can understand, gossip and inquired about their relationship. After hearing the boss's inquiry, Gwen smiled and gave the answer. "Colleague." After hearing Gwen's answer, Russell frowned slightly. Colleague. Although Gwen's answer was somewhat surprising, Russell didn't say anything. He didn't expect Gwen to think of him as a boyfriend right away. Although they do some things that boyfriends and girlfriends only do. But in the end, they only met for the second time today. Although the identity of a colleague may not seem very close, it is better than being used by Gwen as a humanoid tool. After hearing Gwen's answer, the restaurant owner didn't say anything, but gave Russell a cheering look. When the restaurant owner left, Gwen said slowly, "The owner just immigrated from Canada a few years ago, and this restaurant is their family's only source of income. They're nice people, but they're a little too kind." Russell said nothing, nodded silently, and acted as a good listener. After dinner at the restaurant, Gwen did not choose to go home immediately, but took Russell around the neighborhood. Although this is not a Hell's Kitchen, the security environment is not particularly good. While hanging out with Gwen, I ran into some gangsters from time to time. Perhaps because Gwen wasn't alone now, the gang members didn't come to trouble them. However, these gang members had no plans to leave, and followed them far behind. Gwen didn't know what to think. After discovering the gang members who were following them, Gwen not only did not plan to return to the residence, but instead walked towards the neighborhood where the security environment was even worse. Although Gwen's actions were a bit abnormal, Russell didn't say anything, and followed Gwen to the neighborhood with bad security. With the strength of the two of them, even if the number of gang members behind them adds 2 zeros, it can be easily solved. A beautiful and attractive woman who comes to a neighborhood with poor security environment at night is no different from a sheep that comes to the wolves on her own initiative. Although Gwen is not alone now, the gang members directly ignored Russell beside her. In the eyes of these gang members, Russell saw eyes that were once familiar. Racist look. When more and more gang members followed, and even more than a dozen gang members walked towards the front of the street, Gwen finally stopped. After gaining superpowers, I have never experienced the feeling of being protected again. You took such a big advantage today, shouldn't you mind fulfilling my little wish? Ostensibly, Gwen was consulting Russell. But Russell saw something completely different in her big sparkling Causilan eyes. If you don't agree, you're dead. Gwen's current look, Russell has also seen Diana's eyes. As long as Diana showed this look, he knew that he had better follow Diana's wishes obediently. Otherwise, the consequences will be serious. Of course can. Although there are many gang members around them, for Russell, solving them will not be much more difficult than drinking water. What do you want me to do with them, traveler style, or serum style? Before starting, Russell asked Gwen. Don't. Whether it's the traveler's style or the serum style, it may increase Dad's workload in the end. Having said this, Gwen paused for a while, and then said with a serious face, I want the style of my boyfriend to protect his girlfriend. Boyfriend protects girlfriend. After hearing Gwen's answer, Russell's mood suddenly improved a lot. No problem. But after I fulfill your little wish, I hope you can also help me fulfill a small wish. Russell looked at Gwen's delicate and charming face and said slowly, What wish? After seeing Russell's current expression, Gwen suddenly had a bad premonition in his mind. Russell didn't directly say his little wish. He bent down slightly, put his mouth close to Gwen's ear, and said his little wish in a voice that only the two of them could hear. I've seen some special Spider-Woman uniforms on a learning site, and I want to see what you look like in those uniforms. Chapter 91. Gwen's supposedly accurate intuition was proven once again. Although only the two of them could hear these words now, when Russell finished speaking, Gwen's pretty face with some little anticipation just now turned crimson. Gwen didn't speak, raised his right hand and smashed Russell's chest hard. A small fist punches your chest. If Gwen is a normal human, then her action at this time seems to be a shy slapstick between lovers. But the thing is, Gwen is not a normal person. Russell felt as if she had been hit by a car after her small fist that didn't look strong at all slammed into his chest. Hiss. Resisting the violent blow from his chest, Russell couldn't help but gasp. After punching out, Gwen realized that she just forgot to control her strength to a normal level. Are you okay? Looking at Russell who was enduring the pain, Gwen asked softly. It's okay, if it's a bit heavier, you should be protecting me after a while. Although the strength of Gwen's fist was amazing, Russell quickly recovered. The restorative power of serums is no joke. Humph. Gwen snorted again after hearing Russell's answer. For Gwen, the nasal snort was probably just a little habit of her expressing emotions. But for the man who witnessed this scene, this little gesture of hers is not ordinary alluring. Since you hummed, then I'll take it as your agreement. By the way, I forgot to tell you. I have already bought the special uniforms I told you just now. Russell has not been interested in Gwen for a day or two. He knew that the Spider-Woman video was #1 in the superhero category of the learning site. How could he not have prepared in advance? As the saying goes, be prepared. As soon as Russell finished speaking, Gwen's blushing pretty face, which was already like apples, became even redder. Just when she was about to raise a small fist and give Russell a few more blows, Russell turned decisively and walked towards the surrounding gang members. Although he has no grievances with these gang members, but in order to satisfy Gwen's little wishes. More importantly, in order to satisfy his own little wishes, he doesn't mind doing something bad to these gang members. Isn't it just to show masculinity and stage a scene where a boyfriend protects his girlfriend? A piece of cake. As long as Gwen is willing to grant his little wish, let alone teach the gangsters a lesson. Even if he wanted to be a complete enemy of S.H.I.E.L.D., Russell would not hesitate. The gang members thought today would be their lucky day when they first saw Gwen as such a lovely beauty. They had even begun to fantasize in their minds alluring images of frolicking with Gwen. However, they never thought that today was not their lucky day, but Good Friday. In order to satisfy Gwen's little wish, Russell was not polite to these gang members. In this street where half of the streetlights were broken, there were soon screams and screams of pain. In addition to these painful screams, the dull sound of broken bones and fists slamming the body continued to sound in the middle. One after another, the sound broke the calm of the night, and an alternative background music was played. When Russell taught these gang members, Gwen stood there, and Caslin watched Russell's every move with big eyes, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. In less than 3 minutes, these gang members were all lying on the ground, screaming louder than each other. When Russell was back in front of Gwen, Gwen stood on tiptoe and kissed him on the cheek with her alluring red lips. Without waiting for Russell to speak, Gwen directly took his right hand and walked briskly towards the apartment where he lived. Looking at Gwen's happy expression at this time, Russell suddenly felt that this feeling is quite good now. He didn't go home that night and stayed in Gwen's apartment. Fortunately, Diana is on a business trip now, otherwise. The next day, after enjoying the breakfast cooked by Gwen in the apartment, Russell returned to the octopus monster lab in a happy mood. Back in the office, he sat comfortably on the sofa chair, recalling the beautiful scene from last night. According to the agreement, Gwen fulfilled his little wish and let him see a completely different Spider-Woman. Just as he was reminiscing about the wonderful experience last night and looking forward to the next meeting with Gwen, the knock on the door suddenly rang, pulling his mind back to the real world. "Come in." The door to the office was opened, and Peter in a white coat walked in. Although it was morning, Peter came to the experiment early in the morning and worked with number 3 on the remaining 4 sets of Zaku armor. Instead of skipping classes, he took the summer vacation. Looking at Peter with a tangled expression, Russell asked directly, "What's the matter, what's the trouble?" Peter looked at Russell, hesitated for a few seconds, and then slowly said, "Sir, can I advance part of my salary?" Salary advance. After hearing Peter's words, Russell was stunned for a moment. If he remembered correctly, Peter just got his last week's salary the other day. Peter is now no longer an intern at the detective agency, but the chief engineer of the Octopus Monster Military Technology Laboratory. His weekly salary has now increased to $50,000. $50,000 doesn't sound like much, but it's a weekly salary. Converted to an annual salary, this is an annual salary of $2.6 million. Put it this way, the average annual salary of a Wall Street employee is now around $420,000. Of course a salary advance is fine, but can you tell me why you want a salary advance? Peter wasn't the kind of guy who would go crazy with money. Until now, he still takes the bus and subway to come to the laboratory every day. Okay, it's like this. Little Peter quickly explained why he wanted a salary advance. After listening to Peter's story, Russell frowned slightly. He didn't expect that Peter's desire to advance his salary had something to do with him. Peter's beautiful aunt lost her job some time ago. Although Peter now has a decent income, his beautiful aunt clearly has no idea of living off his nephew. Unemployment is unemployed, it's not a big deal. After losing her job, Peter's beautiful Aunt May Parker did not do her previous job, but accepted the invitation of Martin Lee, a good man, from a volunteer at the homeless shelter feast to a full-time employee of the shelter. That's right, it's the Mr. Martin Lee who was killed after being cured by Russell's superpower some time ago. At first, Martin Lee's disappearance didn't make much of a difference. But as time went on, things got worse at the shelter. Without the financial support of Martin Lee, the good man, the shelter had to face a very serious problem. Collapse. Peter didn't want his aunt to go back to being the hardworking, poorly paid night nurse. What's more, when May became a regular employee of the shelter, he saw the joy and satisfaction from the heart on May's face. So, when he knew that the shelter was about to close due to lack of funds, he made a very young decision when he was not an adult. He's going to save this shelter. After speaking his thoughts, Peter looked at Russell nervously, waiting for his answer. Although Russell did not think that Peter wanted to advance his salary to save the shelter, he still chose to refuse. Sorry, Peter, if that's the reason, I can't give you a salary advance. As soon as Russell finished speaking, Peter's expression dimmed, his whole body like an eggplant hit by frost. However, just when he was about to speak, Russell's voice sounded again. I can't advance the salary to you, but you don't have to worry about the shelter, I'll take care of it, your aunt can definitely stay in the shelter to work. Although I am not very interested in the shelter established by Martin Lee. But it cannot be denied that this is a good way to gain prestige. It only takes a little money to get the title of a philanthropist, and the business will not lose money no matter how you look at it. In addition, through this incident, he can further enhance Peter's trust and goodwill in himself, killing two birds with one stone. After hearing Russell's words, Peter wondered if he had heard it wrong, and looked at Russell in disbelief. Don't look at me like this, you heard it right, I will handle the shelter. You should keep your salary for when you're in a relationship. Peter nodded embarrassedly. When Peter left the office, Russell picked up his phone and called a lawyer he had worked with before. Although he decided to save the dying homeless shelter, he did not intend to continue using the name Feast. Martin Lee is the founder of Homeless Shelter Feast. As long as the asylum still bears that name, the earned reputation will more or less be given to him. Russell wasn't going to use his own money to help a dead man gain fame. He did intend to save the shelter, but not to keep it alive, but to regenerate the shelter completely, so as to get rid of the influence of Martin Lee. After the phone call with the lawyer, he credited the lawyer's account with $5 million as the funds and compensation for the acquisition of the shelter. Time flies, and 5 days have passed in the blink of an eye. During these 5 days, Russell met with Gwen twice, conducted in-depth exchanges on some issues and expressed their own views. In addition to the meeting with Gwen and the daily serum prestige quest, he also managed 2 other things during those 5 days. The first is that Hydra finally agreed to help him set up an arms company. In return, the Zaku armors produced by the laboratory in the future need to be sold to Hydra for a set price of $60 million. The rich and powerful Hydra ordered 20 sets at one time. The second is that he's done buying and rebuilding the shelter. The shelter that once belonged to Martin Lee is now a legal asset in his name. The original name of the shelter, Feast, was changed to Starry Sky. Not only that, but now the shelter is not just a homeless shelter, but a real charity organization. Star Charity. Russell had planned to continue using the name of the octopus monster. But at the suggestion of Peter's beautiful Aunt May Parker, he eventually gave up on the idea. Detective offices and military laboratories are fine to be called octopus monsters. But a charitable organization called Octopus is a little too incongruous. Although the name Starry Sky is also very common, it is still more appropriate than the octopus monster. Although the arms companies and charities have been dealt with, it is not the most happy thing for Russell. Now, what he is most looking forward to is Diana, who will soon return to New York. Counting the time, Diana has been on a business trip for more than a month now. During the month, Russell, while having a good time, even hooked up with Spider-Woman Gwen. But what to say? After all, Diana was the main palace who accompanied him for several years. The two of them not only knew the bottom line, but also had a tacit understanding that did not require words. More importantly, Diana's charm is a little bit higher than Gwen. What other people think, Russell doesn't know. Anyway, with him, Diana was more attractive than Gwen. Just when he was looking forward to Diana's return, he suddenly received a call while fishing in the office. Looking at the caller ID, he frowned slightly. General Ross again. General Ross has contacted him again since he last refused to help General Ross capture Banner again. I don't know what General Ross thought. When he contacted him later, General Ross did not entrust him to arrest Banner, but entrusted him to rescue Betty. From the point of view of the Commission, General Ross has indeed changed the Commission. But Russell refused him without any hesitation. Betty is with Banner now. If you want to save Betty, you must fight Hulk. At that time, the commission to rescue Betty will eventually become the capture of Banner. After the phone rang for more than half a minute, Russell finally answered the call. Although he is not very interested in the Hulk now, he intends to listen to what Ross wants to do because of the fact that Ross has been giving him military orders during this period of time. General, what's the problem this time? Russell said calmly. Don't worry, what happened this time has nothing to do with Betty and Banner. General Ross knew that Russell had no interest at all in capturing Banner, and said quickly. Since it has nothing to do with them, then we can continue to chat. Tell me, General, what's your concern this time? Russell said with a smile. The military plans to form a special team composed of superpowers to deal with the crisis caused by superpowers. There are already several candidates. You are also on the list. I wonder if you are interested. Form a superpower team. After hearing General Ross's words, Russell's mind immediately came up with the name of an anti-hero team. Thunderbolts. If I don't know any details, I can't give you an accurate answer, General. Russell replied quickly. The general information of the Special Forces team will be sent to your laboratory later. If you are interested, you can contact me after reading it. After speaking, General Ross hung up the phone. Before long, 3 U.S. soldiers in uniform came to his office and took out a top-secret document from a suitcase they were carrying. After handing him the documents, the 3 soldiers left the laboratory without saying anything. When the 3 soldiers left, Russell opened the top-secret document and browsed it. Sure enough, just as he thought. Opening the cover of the document, he saw the familiar name. Thunderbolts. But soon, he discovered that the Thunder Special Forces the military wanted to form was a little different from what he remembered. If he remembered correctly, the original Thunderbolt team was an anti-hero team carefully selected by the government from the prisoners. By working for the government, members of the Thunder Special Forces can get a certain commutation. Although the Thunder Special Forces have become several, led by Luke Cage, General Ross, and Norman Osborn respectively. But in the beginning, the talent inside the prison was the main source of members of the Thunderbolts. This practice of selecting talents from prisoners is not a rare thing in the United States. However, the Thunder Special Forces that the military wants to form now is somewhat different from what Russell remembered. First, is the source of the members. According to the description in the document, the superpowers recruited by the military this time are not prisoners who have been detained, but superheroes with a certain reputation in the outside world. Luke Cage, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist. On the proposed list of members, Russell saw the 4 Luke Cage he had packed away. In addition to the 4 of them, there are also the names of Blade Warrior, Ghost Rider and others. Forehead. To be precise, not their names, but their code names. The military has yet to figure out their true identities. Not only that, but Spider-Woman and Serum are also on the list. In addition to these more familiar superheroes, there are some lesser-known superheroes in the second half of the list. After reading the list drawn up by the military, Russell closed the document in his hand. The military's idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. If the military can really form the Thunder Special Forces team according to the proposed list, then the military can indeed get a powerful team composed of superpowers. But you don't have to think about it to know that it's absolutely impossible. Not to mention Luke Cage and others who have been killed by him, it is absolutely impossible for him and Gwen to join. As for Blade and Ghost Rider, one of them is only interested in vampires, the other is interested in all evil. Blade Fighter is fine, If the military really recruits Ghost Rider into the Thunderbolt team, it is estimated that the military's top management will die first. No, there may not be only half of them, and even the whole team may be wiped out. When the Ghost Rider cleanses the sins of the world, he doesn't care what status the other party has. Not to mention just the top military, even the president, as long as the Ghost Rider thinks it is necessary, he will also use the Eye of Judgment to judge. Although Russell has not been judged by the Ghost Rider's Eye of Judgment, he can know that the feeling of being burned by the fire must be very uncomfortable. Closing the document in his hand, Russell got up and went to the front of the shredder, and put the document in his hand into the shredder. At this moment, he suddenly realized a problem. Perhaps it was because there was no way to recruit superheroes to join the army, and the military later took up the idea of those talents in the prison. Although the prison is not a good place, it cannot be denied that the prison is a place where many talents are born. Especially in a magical country like America where prisons can be operated privately. Before crossing, Russell saw a very interesting data. The United States accounts for only 5% of the world's population, but in the world's prison population, the United States alone accounts for 25% of the world's prison population. It is said that 1 in 100 American adults has been in prison. If it is only counted as detention, there is 1 in every 38. In the past 30 years, America's population has grown by less than 30%, while the prison population has grown by 800%. This is really a great country. Thinking of this, Russell couldn't help but silently compliment in his heart. After disposing of the documents in his hand, he continued his previous fishing behavior and played Berserker Creed in the office. At noon, he left the lab alone and headed to JFK in the Porsche 911 that had seen many of his and Diana's good times. Diana's flight would arrive at 1 p.m., which was just right in the past. The thought of seeing Diana, who had been on a business trip for more than a month soon, made him a little excited. Although Diana has only been on a business trip for more than a month, this is the longest time they have been apart since they were together. Although he used to travel occasionally on business, he would only be away for a week at the longest. The flight was on time. Russell didn't wait too long at the airport before he saw Diana. Diana is still as beautiful as she was a month ago. Delicate looks without any flaws, not losing the proud figure of the Victoria's Secret model, and the queen temperament of the beautiful group. Diana, now wearing a pair of sunglasses, a well-cut white women's slacks, and high heels, walked out the exit with a small suitcase. After seeing Russell, Diana's delicate face showed a bright smile like sunshine. After arriving in front of Russell, Diana grabbed Russell's collar and pulled Russell in front of her domineeringly. Then, under the gazes of everyone, Yuji Fan gave a full kiss. Forehead. Russell did not expect that Diana would be more excited than him now. Although they have also spread dog food in public before, but basically he took the initiative. And now, it's just the other way around. After more than 10 seconds, Diana finally released Russell. Without waiting for Russell to speak, she held the suitcase with one hand and Russell's right arm with the other, and said softly, let's go home." I don't know if it was his own delusion, but Russell always felt that Diana was a little different from before. But what was different, he couldn't say. Manhattan. Sky Apartments. After returning to the apartment, Diana pushed the suitcase around. Then, he pressed Russell against the wall. Wall bang. Under Russell's gaze, Diana thumped him directly. Reverse this script. Russell wanted to say something, but Diana didn't give him such a chance, and took off her suit jacket and his top. Forehead. Although I don't know why Diana became so excited, Russell had no intention of rejecting Diana at all. As the saying goes, a little is better than a newlywed. The master bedroom of the apartment and the new bed that Diana changed on the day of her business trip finally welcomed the hostess after a month. A few hours later, Russell left the bedroom while rubbing his slightly sore waist. As before, Diana accurately judged his physical limit and pinched him thoroughly. After coming out of the bedroom, Russell came to the dining room, opened the refrigerator, and took out a bottle of mineral water to replenish the water he had just consumed. Afterwards, he took a bottle of milk, returned to the bedroom, and handed the milk to Diana lying on the bed. This noon, neither Russell nor Diana had lunch. At this time, what do you want for lunch? It was not until the evening, and they took a not very serious Mandarin duck bath together in the bathroom, that Russell and Diana finally ended this time of mutual comfort. Manhattan, a Chinese restaurant. Russell and Diana make up for the energy expended with an authentic Chinese dinner. Although both of them have extraordinary physiques don't mean they won't get tired. Especially when they all use their extraordinary physique to communicate vigorously. At the airport, Russell felt that Diana was a little different from before. However, after the exchange this afternoon, he finally knew why. The reason is simple: because they have been apart for a little longer this time. People who used to meet every day suddenly left for more than a month, and it was inevitable that there would be some unspeakable strangeness. However, this strangeness soon disappeared. Diana is still the same Diana from before, nothing has changed. After dinner, Russell and Diana did not return to the apartment for the first time, but strolled along the riverside streets of the Hudson River. Now Diana is wearing jeans that can fully show the beautiful curves of her legs, and her top is a slightly slim casual jacket, showing her beautiful curves wantonly. Diana doesn't look like a royal sister in the morning now, but things like temperament won't change completely because of clothes. When Russell and Diana strolled along the riverside streets, Diana, with her outstanding temperament and first-class appearance and figure, still attracted the attention of many pedestrians. Diana ignored the attention of the people around her, and said softly to Russell beside her, "Do your arms company and laboratory need my help?" "No, I can handle it. I still prefer the way you looked when you were working in the museum," Russell replied with a smile. The addition of Diana can indeed allow arms companies and laboratories to develop faster. However, he did not intend to do so. What Diana wanted was an ordinary life like an ordinary person, and Russell hoped that Diana could live according to her own ideas, instead of doing things she didn't like because of him. "Well, you can always tell me if you want, you know I can do more than that." "Well, I will. Seriously, to have someone like Diana who is beautiful, has a good figure, and can support and trust her unconditionally is not an ordinary feeling." Just when Russell was lamenting whether he saved the whole universe in his last life, so he can have a perfect girlfriend like Diana in this life, Diana suddenly changed the conversation. "Is that image of your serum on purpose?" Diana stopped, turned to look at Russell, and raised her brows. Forehead. It's really a little bit intentional. Russell's brain is now working like crazy. Although from the day he hooked up with Gwen, he thought about how to explain Gwen to Diana. But it turns out that no matter how many situations are simulated in his mind, when Diana really stands in front of him and asks, he will still have an indescribable pressure. After recalling it several times in his mind and confirming that the sword of Vulcan and the lasso of Mantra are now in the closet in the bedroom, Russell took a deep breath and continued, "Spider-Woman, I have communicated with her a few times." Although he said it very euphemistically, Diana instantly understood what he meant. After living together for so long, if Diana couldn't hear it, she would be a little too stupid. "Bring it home," Diana said slowly. "No, absolutely not. I could swear to God," Russell said righteously. "Then why are you so nervous?" A hint of doubt appeared on Diana's pretty face. However, before Russell could answer, she guessed something. Diana, who was exuding a gentle aura just now, turned back to the domineering royal sister in the blink of an eye. Then, staring at Russell who was swallowing saliva, he said seriously, "You can die, I will never sleep in the same bed with another woman." After hearing Diana's words, Russell was stunned for a moment. "It's not right. That's not what I meant to say." Although what Diana said now was completely different from what he thought in his mind, it seemed quite good to think about that picture. Wonder Woman and Spider-Woman together. Russell began to have some thoughts. But after thinking about it, his desire to survive is not offline now. "No, you think too much, I don't mean that. I mean, I may still have some contact with her in the future, those contacts in the serious sense. I want to form a team and need to recruit some people with special talents, and she is a good candidate. If you don't mind, I want to recruit her. If it's just a friendly match with Gwen, Russell doesn't need to explain Gwen to Diana at all. Every now and then he'd be out for a quick snack, and Diana knew it early on. Otherwise, the family rule that you must never take home fast food to eat would not have appeared. When formulating the superhero whitewashing plan, he had the idea of forming his own team. After seeing the information on the Thunder Special Forces sent by General Ross, he became more firm about this idea. The Force on the bright side, he has almost formed it now. The Octopus Arms Company and laboratory will soon be completely stabilized and on the right track. At this point, he felt he could think about forming a team. Don't look at the Earth as still safe now, but that's because all kinds of monsters and ghosts haven't appeared yet. According to the current development of the situation, it is estimated that it will not be long before aliens should come out. Although Russell does not have a great dream of saving the Earth, he also does not want his beautiful life to be destroyed by a planetary life or a purple potato head. You want to form a superhero team? Diana was silent for a few seconds and continued to ask. Not necessarily a superhero team. Although Russell is now playing superhero serum, he doesn't think he is really a superhero. Since you have such an idea, I support you. However, I have 2 conditions. Diana said seriously. No problem, which 2 conditions? Russell asked directly without any hesitation. First, I want to join your team. Although this was not the same as what he had planned, Russell did not refuse, nodded and agreed. He didn't want Diana to give up the ordinary life she expected for her own sake. But since Diana offered to offer it, he would not refuse. He would support whatever Diana wanted to do, just as Diana trusted and supported him. Second, let me name this team. What name? Justice League. Justice League. After hearing Diana's words, Russell was stunned for a moment. What the Justice League was, of course he knew very well. Although this is not the DC universe where Diana is located, how could he not know anything about the DC universe, which is as famous as the Marvel universe? It is precisely because of his understanding that he now feels that something is wrong. If he remembered correctly, when Diana crossed over here, the Justice League had not yet been formed. So the question is, why did Diana say the name of the Justice League without hesitation? What's the matter? What's wrong with the name Justice League? After seeing the puzzled look on Russell's face, Diana asked softly. There's nothing wrong with the name of the Justice League, it's very nice, but I'm a little curious, why did you choose such a name? Russell asked Diana. It wasn't me who got the name, it was Bruce who got it. After Clark's funeral, Bruce told me about his idea of a superhero team, and that's when he said the Justice League name. I think it's a pretty good name, and it fits your superhero whitewashing plan right now. Diana explained briefly. When she finished explaining, Russell showed her original appearance. Then, he said slowly, then call it the Justice League. After talking about this topic, Russell and Diana continued their after-dinner walk, walking slowly along the river bank. During the walk, they chatted about what each other had experienced during the month they were apart. Russell's side has nothing to say. Diana knew it when she was still investigating the Dead Sea ruins. After all, at that time, Russell would call her every once in a while. However, Russell didn't know much about what Diana and the others found in the Dead Sea ruins. He only knew that Diana and the others had found some ancient documents in the ruins. Diana hesitated for a few seconds, and then slowly said, after preliminary analysis, it is now confirmed that the documents we excavated are also part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls refer to ancient scrolls written in Hebrew that were unearthed in ancient caves along the coast of the Dead Sea. These papers are mainly divided into 3 categories. The first category is the Old Testament books. The second category is biblical commentaries, apocrypha, etc. The third category is non-biblical literature. A large part of the non-biblical literature is prophecy about the end of the world. Although Russell is not an archaeologist, he has still heard of the name of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the spring of 1947, the first Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered by accident. It is the oldest Jewish manuscript unearthed so far, and the Dead Sea Scrolls get their name from this accidental discovery. However, Russell knew that the Dead Sea Scrolls had nothing to do with the Dead Sea Scrolls of archaeology. He knew about the Dead Sea Scrolls and became interested in them purely because of a certain classic anime from Neon Kingdom. Anything new to discover? Russell continued to ask. Most of them are no different from the Dead Sea Scrolls unearthed before. Having said this, Diana paused for a while before continuing, but some of the ancient scrolls are very strange. Although those ancient scrolls were also written in Hebrew, they were obviously encrypted. What the encrypted content is, has not yet been deciphered. Russell, no way. Since 1947, new Dead Sea Scrolls have been unearthed, but so far, no one has ever heard of an encrypted scroll. I don't know if I thought too much. Russell unconsciously came up with the classic anime of Neon Kingdom. Will not. This is the Marvel world, how can there be such a thing as an apostle? Impossible. Should. Impossible. Russell did not continue to ask Diana about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and continued to walk along the coastal streets with Diana. Finally, they returned to the parking lot near the Chinese restaurant. Just as Russell was about to start the car and return to the apartment, Diana suddenly grabbed his right hand on the car's gear and placed his right hand on her thigh with perfect lines and feel. Although Diana didn't say anything now, Russell understood what she meant in an instant. Russell didn't speak, and quickly looked at the surrounding environment. Very good. There is no one or a car around. When Russell and Diana returned to Sky Apartments, it was 2 hours later. The interior space of the Porsche 911 is not particularly spacious, but Russell and Diana are used to it. After Diana returned from a business trip, Russell's life finally returned to normal. Now, he no longer has to sleep alone with his arms around the pillow. No matter how soft the pillow was, it couldn't compare to a real person with fair and smooth skin. Days go by like this. In the blink of an eye, more than half a month passed. After more than half a month of hard work, Number 3 and Peter finally built the 4 sets of Zaku armor that the military needed, allowing Russell to successfully get the follow-up $300 million. After delivering the Zaku armor to the military, Russell did not have the 20 sets of Zaku armor that Number 3 and Peter needed to make Hydra immediately. He intends to hand over these 20 sets of armor to the newly established Octopus Monster Arms Company. On the surface, it does. But in fact, the real manufacturer of the armor is still Number 3. After having a supporting processing plant, Number 3 programmed various programs overnight, transforming the processing plant that originally required a large number of skilled workers into an unmanned factory. As for Peter, Russell sent him to develop new weapons. On the day the Octopus Arms Company opened, General Ross made a platform for the opening of the company as agreed. Not only that, General Ross also brought several military orders and several military bosses, fulfilling his original promise. In addition to the Octopus Monster Arms Company, Russell's Star Charity organization is also on the right track. Although Russell did not let Diana join the arms company in the laboratory, Diana offered to take a position at the Star Charity. For Diana's request, Russell agreed without thinking, making Diana the person in charge of Starry Sky Charity. It's worth mentioning that Peter's beautiful aunt is now Diana's second in command. For Diana, Star Charity is just a side business, and museums are her main business. When Diana was away, Peter's pretty aunt was in full charge of the charities, big and small. It wasn't until Diana became the head of the charity that Russell saw Peter's beautiful aunt again. However, this time, he discovered that a job that can make him feel joy and happiness from the heart really makes people exude a completely different charm. He had thought Peter's pretty Aunt May Parker was at least 40 or 50 years old now. After inquiring, he found out that Peter's beautiful aunt was much younger than he thought. Little Peter is only 16 years old this year, and his beautiful aunt is only 36 years old this year. 36 years old is a beautiful time in life for a woman, but people are different. No wonder Tony, who was used to seeing beautiful women, gave Peugeot this evaluation when he first met Aunt Peter. It's not something anyone can do to get Tony, the seasoned prodigal son, to give such an evaluation as Peugeot. To be honest, when he saw Peter's beautiful aunt again in the office building of the charity organization, Russell had a bright feeling. The office floor of Star Charity. Russell sat in Diana's office, looking at the papers that Peter's beautiful Aunt May had just handed in. This office was originally his, but he had only been there once. Then, it became Diana's office. No way, who made Diana the head of a charity organization now? Russell quickly finished reading the document in his hand and looked up at May, who was standing in front of him. May wore a pair of light blue denim trousers today, which perfectly outlined the curves of her slender legs. The top is a blue vertical striped shirt, which is very coordinated with jeans. The sleeves of the shirt were rolled up to the elbows, and the buttons on the front of the shirt were also open several times. When bending over, you could see the obvious professionalism. In addition, May is now wearing a pair of gold-framed glasses, and a round earring that is a little bigger than a ring on her left ear. The long blonde hair was neatly combed and fell naturally, falling behind his shoulders. After seeing May's outfit today, Russell couldn't help but take a few more glances. At the same time, May's previous occupations can't help but come to his mind. Night shift nurse. After imagining what May looked like in a nurse's uniform, Russell closed the document in his hand and said slowly, "There is nothing wrong with the plan, just follow your plan, and don't worry about funding." After transforming the homeless shelter that belonged to Mr. Negative, Martin Lee, into a charitable organization, May now has to deal with not only homeless shelters but many other areas of philanthropy. For example, helping people displaced by unemployment, and housewives injured by domestic violence, etc. There are many similar charitable projects, mostly focusing on those who need immediate help. "Okay, thank you for your support, Mr. Bradley." With a happy smile on May's face, she came to Russell, bent down and took back the document in Russell's hand. When she bent over to retrieve the document, Russell saw her career again. An enterprising woman is really not the same. Russell praised in his heart. He wasn't mocking May, but really complimenting her. May is not the kind of person who would betray her looks to achieve her goals. She would dress like this today purely because it was her style of dressing. "Okay, you go out first. If there are other projects that need financial support, you can contact me or Miss Prince at any time," Russell said to May. "He's here tonight to deal with the charitable organization because Diana just doesn't have time today." May contacted Diana, and Diana contacted him. Then, here he is. Diana is now deciphering the encrypted Dead Sea Scrolls with her colleagues in the museum, and if there is any new progress, she will be so busy that she doesn't even have time for lunch. After watching May leave the office, and habitually speculating about May's measurements, Russell, who was sitting in the boss chair, turned into a serum agent. "Anyway, they have already come out of the chairman's office of Octopus Monster Industry, so let's complete today's task of doing a good deed every day." After transforming from superhero serum, Russell came to the window, pushed open the window, and jumped out directly. Star Charity's office building is located on the 12th floor. This is a very ordinary office building. There are many companies in the building, many of which are public welfare organizations like Star Charity. This is why he chose to arrange the Star Charity office here in the first place. Working in the same building with a bunch of nonprofit organizations, the effect is similar to that of a financial company working on Wall Street. After coming out of the office, Russell swayed his white tentacles and walked fast in the jungle, composed of high-rise buildings. Safe and secure New York City has never been short of people who need help. Without much effort, Russell, in the form of a serum agent, found his goal of doing one good a day, today. It was a high-rise building that was on fire, and the burning floor was several floors below the top floor of the building. Although several fire trucks and police cars with sirens were gathered under the building, the floors were too high, far beyond the limits of fire water cannons and rescue stairs. After seeing this scene, Russell didn't hesitate and swung directly towards the burning building. In less than 3 minutes, he rescued the residents trapped on the roof. When rescuing the trapped residents, he also rescued the pet cats and dogs of several of the residents. According to his true character, he would be too lazy to care about these cats and dogs. He's not that dog-loving ex-colleague from the Continental Hotel. But no way, who made him play the superhero serum now? In a country where political correctness is obsessed, it is necessary to do some politically correct things. This is the so-called My Big Beautiful Country has its own national conditions here. After rescuing the trapped residents, cats and dogs, and cooperating with the reporters at the scene, and leaving them with the photos in the newspaper, Russell shot white tentacles towards the building next to him, intending to return directly to the Octopus Monster Industrial Headquarters in Manhattan. However, just as he returned to his chairman's office with his tentacles in a rather happy mood, he suddenly saw 2 familiar figures. How could they be here? Although the distance is a bit far, Russell's eyesight is very good. He recognized Banner and Betty Swearing from the taxi at a glance. After seeing the 2 of them, he swung to the roof of a nearby building and watched them both condescendingly. It has been almost a month since Banner escaped from General Ross. According to Banner's previous escape experience, it would be enough for them to escape back to Brazil within a month. Watching Betty walking ahead angrily and Banner following Betty without saying a word, Russell quickly guessed their purpose. If there is anything in New York worthy of Banner's nostalgia, it is only Dr. Samuel Stern, Mr. Lan, who has been discussing the cure with him. Looking at Betty and Banner's direction, Russell confirmed his guess. Betty and Banner were just walking towards Gabang College now. Although Russell did not tell General Ross about Dr. Samuel Stern, he would not forget that Dr. Samuel Stern is now a tutor in the cell biology department of Gabang College. After confirming this, a plan suddenly appeared in his mind. Pull Banner into the Justice League. Although Tony has built Mark III now, Captain America Steve Rogers was dug out by S.H.I.E.L.D. early in the morning. But so far, the Avengers are still stuck in Nick Fury's plan, with no sign of execution at all. Since the Avengers has not yet appeared, and Banner has not joined the Avengers, it may be a good decision to pull him into the Justice League. Although Banner was not on his recruiting list at the beginning, since he has encountered it, it is not a bad thing to draw Banner into the Justice League. In Russell's initial list, the only people he wanted to win into the Justice League were Peter, Spider-Woman Gwen, Scarlet Wanda, Quicksilver Pietro, Wasp Hope and others. As for other superheroes or villains, he doesn't mind pulling in if there's a chance. But so far, his regular list is not long. After deciding to draw Banner into Zhenglian, Russell's eyes became a little different when he looked at Banner, and his eyes when he looked at Banner's girlfriend Betty also became different. Although Betty is not the kind of very beautiful beauty, it is not bad either. In addition to that, in some universes, Betty is also the Harpy and the Red Hulk. Standing on the roof looking at Banner and Betty who were heading to Gabang College, Russell quietly followed behind them. After arriving at Gabang Academy, he released the form of Serum Agent in a no-man's corner. Although Banner has a wealth of escape experience, in front of Russell, who has rich assassination skills, his anti-stalking skills are completely worthless. Banner and Betty didn't have much trouble finding the teaching building where Dr. Samuel Stern was. Dr. Samuel Stern just finished today's teaching task and walked out of the teaching building with a briefcase in a happy mood. However, he took a few steps, and Betty came to him. "I'm sorry, Dr. Stern, to bother you, I'm Betty Ross." After hearing Betty's voice, Dr. Stern stopped and turned to look at Betty. "Betty Ross, oh, it's Dr. Ross from Culver University." They were all professionals in biological cytology, and Dr. Stern recognized Betty right away. "Someone wants to meet you." Betty did not hesitate and said immediately, "Okay." Although Dr. Stern did not know who wanted to see him, he still agreed. As soon as he finished speaking, Banner, wearing a peaked cap and a dark gray long-sleeved t-shirt, came to Dr. Stern. Just as Dr. Stern looked at Banner suspiciously, Banner said, "Mr. Lan. Are you Mr. Green?" Dr. Stern looked at Banner with surprise. Banner nodded. Watching Dr. Stern lead Banner and Betty into the teaching building, Russell did not immediately follow. When he found that Banner and Betty were walking towards Gabang Academy, he knew what Banner was thinking. "Don't you just want to heal your mutation and turn yourself back into a normal person?" Banner's idea can't be wrong. After all, he used to be a scientist, not a soldier. Power, for him, was far less fascinating than knowledge. But the problem is that he still underestimates the mutation caused by gamma energy. If everything goes according to the plot of the movie universe, General Ross will come with the army and the second strengthened Bronski in a moment. Then, Banner, who turned into Hulk, will fight with Bronski, who turned into Abomination, and finally defeat the Abomination and embark on the journey of escape again. But now, it is clear that things cannot continue to develop at this pace. Whether General Ross will come with the army later, Russell can't be sure now. But Bronski is definitely not coming. The fortified serum, while giving Bronski an amazing ability to recover, was unlikely to make Bronski grow ahead again. If the recovery power of the enhanced serum can reach this level, General Ross will not be so obsessed with Banner. When Banner and Betty were brought to the laboratory by Dr. Stern, Russell took out a small silver white ball the size of a ping-pong ball from the system space. On the surface, this little sphere is somewhat unremarkable. But this is the latest gizmo developed by No. 3. Bionic-assisted transforming robot. Using the weak telepathy ability attached to the endosymbiotic battle armor reward, the silver-white ball in Russell's hand began to deform rapidly. After 2 or 3 seconds, the small ball in his hand completely changed its form, becoming a bionic robot with the shape of a spider and the ability to fly. After completing the transformation, Russell gently tossed the silver-white spider in his hand. Then, the spider flew in the direction of the teaching building. At the same time, Russell took out a pair of sunglasses from the system space and put them on. The moment the glasses are put on, the lens shows the perspective of the bionic spider. This bionic spider, like the endosymbiotic battle armor, is made of fully intelligent liquid metal. After number 3 made endosymbiosis 2 out of the surplus of all intelligent liquid metal, Russell had the idea of making number 3 other robots. The initial shape is a bionic-assisted deformation robot with a small ball, which is a new product developed by No. 3. With more and more tasks assigned to No. 3, Russell now understands more and more why Tony is so dependent on Jarvis. With the help of artificial intelligence, you can indeed save yourself a lot of energy and time. After putting on his sunglasses, Russell went to a nearby bench and sat down directly. Under his control, the flying bionic spider quickly approached Dr. Stern's laboratory. Before long, the figures of Banner, Betty and others appeared in his sight. It came together, and there was the sound of conversation between them. Russell didn't pay too much attention to their conversation. You don't need to listen to know that Banner wants Dr. Stern to directly conduct human experiments on himself to cure his genetic mutation. As Banner talked to Dr. Stern, Russell thought about his next plan. Although he now has the plan to draw Banner into Ganglion, he still does not have a very clear idea on how to do it. It was his temporary decision to draw Banner into Ganglion, and it was impossible for him to plan ahead. In addition, to draw Banner into Ganglion, he also has to solve a problem. General Ross. If General Ross cannot be dealt with, even if Banner is willing to join the Ganglion, Russell will have to deal with all kinds of troubles brought by General Ross. For now, Russell is quite satisfied with General Ross. Most of the current military orders from Octopus Industry are drawn by General Ross. After thinking for a while, he gave up the simplest and most rude way of dealing with it, the kind that belongs to the killer. Although it is the easiest way to kill General Ross, in order to bring Banner into the Positive Alliance, it is somewhat unreasonable to kill General Ross. After thinking for a while, he decided to give up thinking about this issue. See you step by step. The big deal is to give General Ross something to give up the hunt for Banner. As long as the benefits are large enough, it is not impossible for General Ross to give up the capture. In addition to giving General Ross enough benefits, letting him give up voluntarily is also a good choice. However, Russell has not yet thought of how to do it. Time passed little by little. After some heated conversations, Banner finally decided to conduct unproven human experiments directly on himself. From a scientific standpoint, Banner's decision wasn't particularly sensible. But then again, if Banner strictly followed the experimental procedures, he would not be like this now. He became like this now because he was too confident back then, and he conducted the gamma energy experiment on himself without being fully verified. As a result, the Hulk was born. Banner back then had an impulse. Now, he intends to impulsively a second time. Dr. Stern did not stop Banner's thoughts at all. If Banner is unwilling, in order to satisfy his own curiosity, Dr. Stern will even encourage Banner to conduct human experiments. Through sunglasses attached to a bionic spider, Russell watched what was happening in the lab. Like Dr. Stern, he has no plans to stop Banner. If Banner is not allowed to do it once, he will not give up. Only by letting Banner try it himself can he know that the Hulk is not something he can get rid of if he wants to. Banner took off his shirt and shoes and lay on the lab bed in his shorts. Betty stood beside him, tying up the restraints that bound his limbs and waist. As for Dr. Stern, he is now operating various instruments in the laboratory. After all the preparations were done, Dr. Stern said to Banner, "The blood separator will mix the antidote in your blood, but the antidote will only work if you are completely transformed. Relax." Betty, who was standing beside the experimental bed, held Banner's left hand and said softly, "Are you ready?" Dr. Stern stuffed Banner's mouth with something to prevent him from biting off his tongue involuntarily. Seeing Banner nodded firmly, Dr. Stern said to Betty next to him, "You'd better not touch him." Dr. Stern said as he picked up a special brain shocker. Zzz. The ends of the brain shocker shone with blue-white electricity. Under Betty's watch, Dr. Stern brought the special brain shock device close to Banner's temple. Without any hesitation, Dr. Stern placed the brain shocker on Banner's temple, giving Banner an electric shock he had never experienced before. What? Banner suddenly became extremely painful. After completing the initial electrification, Dr. Stern took off the electric shock device immediately. Banner struggled with pain on his face, and his eyes instantly turned green. At the same time, the blood vessels in his body began to bulge, and the strange green color began to replace his original skin color. Ah! Banner let out a painful howl. At the same time as the skin gradually turned green, Banner's body began to grow rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing Banner's mutation at this time, Dr. Stern and Betty both took a half step back involuntarily. Time passed slowly, and Banner's wailing continued. Russell is not in the lab, but through the bionic spider, he is witnessing what is happening right now. After seeing Banner's disgusting transformation process at this time, he felt that it was a wise choice for him to give up copying Banner's superpowers. Of course, under normal circumstances, Banner's transformation would look a little better than it is now, and it wouldn't be so painful. Banner's body was getting bigger and bigger, and the test bench could not bear the pressure of him. As his body got bigger, Banner's struggle became stronger and stronger. The restraints that bound his limbs began to show signs of being freed. Dr. Stern looked at this scene in disbelief, and couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, Betty was the first to react and said loudly to Dr. Stern, "Quickly inject the antidote." After speaking to Stern, Betty climbed directly onto Banner's body, sat on Banner's body, and kept saying to Banner, "Look at me, Banner. Look at me, look into my eyes." Quote. Whether Banner looked at Betty again now, Russell didn't know. However, after seeing this scene in the laboratory, he frowned slightly. 3 crazy guys. No, to be precise, 3 mad scientists. Obviously they are professionals, but what they do now is not professional at all. Just when he was complaining about the current practices of Banner and the 3 of them and planned to continue to be a spectator, an accident happened. Banner, who had transformed into a giant, looked at Betty sitting on his body and calmed down for a few seconds. But next, he made a move that neither Russell nor Betty expected. "I saw," Banner shouted. His right hand suddenly exerted force, and broke free from the restraint belt on his right hand. Before Betty could react, Banner, no, to be precise, Hulk's right hand came to her and pushed her down. As for Hulk, he doesn't use much force now. But for Betty, who was just an ordinary person, Hulk's push was almost like a speeding car hitting her. Bang! Betty was pushed out without any suspense. After knocking over a pile of instruments and bottles, she slammed into the wall heavily. Puff! The huge impact force made Betty involuntarily spit out a mouthful of blood. Then, the whole person fell to the floor in pain, looking at Hulk, who was still struggling on the experimental bench with complicated eyes. After seeing this scene, Russell couldn't help taking a breath. This development was something he never expected. He thought that things would develop as he remembered, but it turned out that he guessed the beginning correctly, but not the enchantment. After pushing Betty away, Hulk broke free of all the restraints on his body without much effort. As he broke free, the overwhelmed experimental bench fell to the ground with a bang. The sudden accident left Dr. Stern completely stunned. Seeing the nearly 3-meter-tall Hulk standing in front of him panting heavily, Dr. Stern stepped back one after another, looking at Hulk with fear. Before he could speak, Hulk raised his right hand and waved it suddenly. Bang! The huge palm swung out with terrifying power, overwhelmingly destroying the instrument in front of it. Although Dr. Stern was not the main target of Hulk's attack, he was unavoidably swept away by Hulk's big hand, and the whole person was instantly knocked out. After destroying the instrument in front of him, Hulk opened his hands and let out a howl like a beast. "Hey big man, calm down." Russell, who transformed into a superhero serum, rushed to the laboratory and said to the roaring Hulk. After hearing his voice, Hulk suddenly turned around and looked at him with a grim expression. Just when Russell thought that Hulk would run towards him angrily, Hulk made a second surprise move. After discovering that the speaker was Russell who threw him around last time, Hulk didn't hesitate, his legs suddenly exerted force, the whole person slammed through the wall like a cannonball, and quickly disappeared from Russell's sight. Forehead. Is this guy out of control? After seeing the scene where Hulk pushed Betty away, Russell intuitively thought that Hulk had lost control. If the Hulk hadn't gotten out of control, he wouldn't have hurt Betty. But now, after Hulk saw him, he turned around and ran away without saying a word. It didn't look like he was out of control. Hulk, who is out of control, will not make a U-turn and run. It has to be said that Hulk's actions are surprising. It seemed that the last blood serum had left a deep impression on him. When Hulk escaped from the laboratory, Russell did not chase him immediately, but came to Betty with broken ribs and severe internal bleeding. Being pushed by an angry Hulk is not a pleasant thing. Looking at Hulk, who was full of pain but still did not faint, Russell squatted down, white tentacles poured out of his right hand, and began to heal Betty. Betty, although not a genius like Tony and Banner, is one of the experts in the field of cell biology. Otherwise, she would not have been able to study gamma energy with Banner at the beginning. Simply put, Betty is a talent with recruiting value. Of course, this solicitation value is aimed at the octopus industry and laboratory, not a positive link. When the white tentacles touched Betty's body, only 2 or 3 seconds later, the painful look on Betty's face disappeared. After a few seconds, Betty, who was lying on the ground, stood up again. After completely curing Betty, Russell retracted the white tentacles of his right hand. "Thank you, Pete." Betty thanked Russell seriously. Pete. Russell was stunned when he heard the name. After a few seconds, he remembered that this was the pseudonym he used to fool Alice. "Doctor, my name is not Pete, my name is Russell, Pete is a pseudonym." Russell corrected Betty. After he finished speaking, he turned around and went straight to Dr. Stern, who was also lying on the ground. Like healing Betty, he used the healing power of the serum to heal Dr. Stern's injuries. Before Dr. Stern could speak, Russell lifted the recovered Dr. Stern and made him stand in front of him. "I am a little interested in your research. I have prepared all the research data and materials related to Banner, and prepare now." After hearing Russell's words, Dr. Stern nodded instinctively. Although Russell healed his physical injuries, Russell had nothing to do with his spiritual injuries. While Dr. Stern is a scientist with a huge excess of curiosity and ambition, he is not the kind of determined scientist. After confirming that Dr. Stern understood what he meant, Russell went to the storage room next to the laboratory. A variety of experimental raw materials are stored in the storage room. Most of them are Banner's blood that Dr. Stern concentrated and reproduced. These blood, according to the different concentrations, are hung in various storage cabinets in different categories. Russell searched inside and found the bottle of blood sample marked, Mr. Green, efficacy 14.56%. This bottle of blood sample doesn't seem to be anything special, but Russell clearly remembers that this bottle of blood sample is the key to Dr. Stern becoming the supervillain boss. After taking it out of the cabinet, he put the blood sample into the system space. To keep blood fresh, you need a suitable temperature and environment. However, for Russell, who has system space, this is not a problem at all. What is the state of things when they are put into the system space, and what is the state when they are taken out? Even if a bowl of freshly cooked beef powder is kept in the system space for a month, it will be exactly the same as when it was just cooked. Although Russell doesn't know the principle, but from the effect point of view, the system space is a space where time is still, and the preservation effect is not generally good. After placing the blood bottle in the system space, he returned to the messy laboratory and said to Dr. Stern and Betty, who were copying the data, "Destroy all Banner's blood samples in it, and don't leave a drop." After hearing Russell's words, Dr. Stern looked embarrassed. However, after seeing Russell looking at himself again, he quickly replied, "No problem, I will destroy it." Although Dr. Stern had seen reports on superhero serums in newspapers and on TV, he never imagined that the very kind serums on the news would bring him so much pressure. When Russell and Agent Serum looked at him, Dr. Stern felt like he was being watched by a jaguar who had been starving for a week. Without any hesitation, Dr. Stern trotted into the storage room and began to destroy Banner's blood samples. Betty did not enter the storage room to destroy Banner's blood sample like Dr. Stern did, but came to Russell and said with a complicated expression, "Aren't you going to stop Ben, that monster?" After seeing Betty's expression now, Russell smiled and said, "Monster. That's what you call your boyfriend." "That green monster is not my boyfriend, Banner is my boyfriend," Betty said quickly. "That green monster is Banner, whether you like it or not, that's part of Banner. If you really like Banner, whether it's his strengths or his weaknesses, you can only accept it together." Russell wasn't going to explain to Betty what exactly was the difference between Banner and the Hulk. Don't look at Betty and Banner being glued together now, but sooner or later both of them will break up. In other universes, the two of them are husband and wife, but in this universe, the two of them should have little chance. Betty didn't speak anymore, walked into the storage room next door, and destroyed Banner's blood samples with Dr. Stern. When all Banner's blood samples were destroyed and all the results of Dr. Stern's research on Banner were obtained, Russell left the laboratory from the wall that the Hulk broke through. Not long after he left the laboratory, he saw military Humvees running wildly on the street. In addition to these Humvees, he also saw military helicopters. General Ross finally brought someone, but unfortunately, he came late. At this time, Hulk was running wildly on the streets of Manhattan, like a crazy rhino. Behind him, followed one after another police car. Russell didn't have much effort to find the Hulk who was frantically destroying on the street. Just as he was about to jump off the roof of the building and quickly deal with the Mad Hulk, his phone suddenly rang. Sure enough, it was General Ross's call. When he got on the phone, General Ross said quickly, "Banner is wreaking havoc in Manhattan right now, isn't superhero serum going to stop him? I'm on the spot right now." After finishing speaking, Russell directly hung up General Ross. However, as soon as he hung up, his phone rang again. This time, it was not General Ross who called, but Tony. After pressing the answer button, Tony's voice rang. "A green monster appeared in the Manha section. I might not be able to stop him by myself. Are you interested in wearing a battle armor?" Tony didn't know that Russell was the serum. He only knew that Russell was the ace killer of the Continental Hotel, possessing a high-tech armor that even he admired. After hearing Tony's words, Russell said with a smile, "Is the famous Tony Stark going to start being a superhero?" "Okay, stop talking nonsense. If you don't come, I'll go alone if I don't come," Tony answered quickly. After hearing Tony's words, Russell shook his head with a smile. "You better come to the scene and talk about it." After finishing speaking, Russell hung up the phone and looked at the Hulk who was wreaking havoc on the street. He originally only planned to draw Banner into Zhenglian, but judging from the current situation, in addition to drawing Banner, he may also be able to take this opportunity to come to the front of the stage above board. Announcing the true identity of the superhero serum was something he planned early on. However, he never found the right opportunity. Now is a good opportunity. The octopus industry and lab are on track, and it's time to reveal the true identity of the serum. Although this decision is a bit impulsive, since he has decided to do so, Russell will not hesitate. After hanging up the phone, he took the endosymbiotic battle armor out of the system space, let number 3 take over the battle armor, and instructed No. 3. Right now, he doesn't plan to put on the armor. When Hulk grabbed a police car, threw the police car out like a basketball, and smashed it at the New York police in the distance, the roof of the Russell building jumped off. Just as the police car was about to hit the police officers hiding behind other vehicles, a white tentacle fell from the sky and wrapped around the police car. After being entangled by the white tentacles, the flying police car drew an arc, bypassed the police cars and pedestrians on the street, and flew back towards Hulk. Bang! The police car that flew back slammed into Hulk, causing the amazing Hulk to take 2 or 3 steps back involuntarily. Superhero landing. After throwing the police car at the Hulk, Russell in serum agent form landed on the street. After seeing his figure, the pedestrians who fled around suddenly burst into cheers. The prestige he had accumulated before was now playing its due role. Russell ignored the cheers around him and looked at the Hulk in the distance calmly. Although the Hulk's appearance hasn't changed much, compared to when he was at Culver University, there is obviously something wrong with the Hulk now. The Hulk now looks like a furious beast, giving people a feeling of completely destroying everything in front of him. Although the previous Hulk looked angry, it still gave people a sense of reason. Russell didn't care about the reason why Hulk became like the beast he is now. As long as Hulk can do his current, villain role, it is enough for him. As for other issues, you can wait until things are over and deal with them slowly. When Russell looked at Hulk, Hulk also widened his green eyes and looked at him with a grim expression. Just when Russell thought that Hulk would turn his head and run like he did in the laboratory, Hulk finally made a move that was in line with his current, villain, status. I saw Hulk roaring like a beast. Afterwards, Hulk, who was full of fury all over his body, did not hesitate, and rushed towards Russell like a main battle tank rushing at full speed. Dong dong dong. The sound of Hulk's footsteps is as amazing as his size. Every time he took a step, the ground seemed to shake slightly. In just a blink of an eye, Hulk, who was dozens of meters away, came to Russell. The huge right fist carried terrifying strength and slammed towards Russell, looking like he was going to smash Russell to death. The furious Hulk was coming, but Russell had no plans to evade or retreat at all. When he was still on the roof of the building just now, he saw a lot of reporters and photographers. Although he doesn't know if these reporters and photographers are doing live broadcasts, he can't go back now for Serum's heroic image. If even the heroes run away, who else can stand up? It's not a question of winning or not, it's that he has to stand here and fight the Hulk. Righteous superheroes, Serums, go. At this moment, Russell seemed to be possessed by a real man called Undocumented. What? Looking at Hulk's green fist that was getting closer and closer to him, Russell also let out a roar. Then, the white fist slammed out like a cannonball. Boom. One green and one white, two fists, one large and one small, slammed together fiercely. When the two fists with a huge gap collided together, a deafening crash sounded like a C4 bomb exploded. Along with this amazing impact sound, there are also shock waves and air waves visible to the naked eye. The ground standing at the feet of Hulk and Russell shattered, and the cobweb-like crack instantly spread out for more than 10 meters. Powerful shock waves and air waves swept around like a tsunami, shattering the glass of the buildings around the street and flying nearby debris. Even the New York police officers who were far away were also knocked to the ground by the shock wave. No one thought that this pair of punches between Russell and Hulk could explode with such amazing power. Not only did the surrounding police and pedestrians not think of it, but even Russell and Hulk themselves did not think of it. The moment the fists collided, Russell keenly discovered that Hulk's power was actually stronger than the last time. Is this the so-called more angry, more powerful? After fighting Hulk, Russell took the initiative to attack without any hesitation. I saw his left hand reaching towards the Hulk, and the white tentacles flew towards the Hulk lightning. Shulker snake hands. The battle at Culver University has proved that Serum World is not generally useful to the Hulk. Although it's a different battlefield now, Russell doesn't mind letting Hulk experience the taste of Serum's return. The white tentacles flew towards Hulk like a python. Just as the white tentacles were about to touch the Hulk, Hulk's legs suddenly exerted force, and the whole person rose up like a missile. Although Hulk's speed is not very good, his jumping power is not generally amazing. In the blink of an eye, he jumped to a height of 30 or 40 floors, and came to the air hundreds of meters above the ground. When Hulk jumped into the air, Russell put away the white tentacle on his left hand. Although his white tentacles can also fly a distance of hundreds of meters, but now he does not intend to do so. Since it has been decided to regard this battle as a battle of fame in which Serum announces its true identity, of course, it is necessary to maximize the value of this battle. Russell ignored the Hulk in midair. Because of the current Hulk, someone else will solve it. After dodging Russell's Shulker snakehand, the Hulk began to fall rapidly under the influence of gravity. However, just a few meters after he fell, a silver-white figure flew in front of him like a missile. The first machine of the inner symbiotic battle armor, debut. The first machine of endosymbiosis, controlled by number 3, first hit Hulk. Then, before Hulk could react, the arc pulse cannon in both palms aimed at Hulk at the same time. Call out, call out. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.